The sun had scarcely crested the eastern horizon when the Raven arrived at River Run, its wings slick with rain from the Riverland's squall, and its message sealed with the direwolf sigil of House Stark. Catelyn Stark's fingers trembled only once before she broke the wax. The parchment inside bore a single line in Robb's own sharp script: "I will have the capital or perish tonight. Burn this." She touched the words as if they were her son's cheek, the ink still faintly damp, and felt a shiver of pride and dread mingle in her breast. Through the open casement, in the canvas pavilion stationed half a league beyond the Blackwater Rush, Robb Stark stared at a crude map lit by a sputtering oil lamp. Gray wind lay alongside his leg, ears flat, keen eyes reflecting flame. The blackness outside was absolute. The clouds thick as wool. No moon graced the heavens. Robb traced a finger along the blue-green thread that marked a lesser tributary of the Blackwater. "Sir Brynden," he murmured, "does your scout still swear the sluice gate just north of the chain gate remains unguarded?" The Blackfish, silver-haired, damp with sweat despite the cool night, nodded once. "They posted only a handful of drunk goldcloaks 3 nights running. They've grown lax, believing Stannis broken on the waves." His mouth curved into a slash of contempt. Lions gorge themselves on triumph, and in gorging grow slow. Robb's jaw clenched. Slow is dead tonight. He looked up at the ranking captains clustered near the brazier, Galbart Glover smelling faintly of pine tar, Edmure Tully still bandaged about the ribs, Corin Halfhand returned from the wall to fulfill his oath to Eddard's blood, and others whose faces blurred into one iron will. "We carry 2,000 chosen in the boats. Quiet men, light armor, no banners. The river will cover approach. Once within the city we open the Lion Gate from within for Rusu's main host. The walls fall in silence or they burn when dawn repaints them stark gray." He paused. No songs after. King's Landing is not won until the Red Keep kneels. "Men are now." Edmure exhaled, the breath ghosting. "And the small folk?" Robb laid a hand on his uncle's shoulder. "Winterfell's words, uncle. We protect them. Whosoever yields shall keep his life." Then softer, for Edmure's ear alone: "I will not be my father's son if innocent blood salts these streets." Men went forth to their companies. Armor was muffled in raw wool, shield rims wrapped in boiled leather, torches forbidden. The storm clouds began to loose a sullen drizzle, perfect for drowning footfalls. Beneath the rain, Robb found his mother waiting by his horse. She had burned the letter. Ash clung to her nails. No tears threatened her eyes. She had shed them all at Sansa's lost pleas and Bran's broken body. "Your father would have disapproved," she whispered. Eddard favored truth beneath the sun. Robb took her damp cheeks in his gloved palms. "Father's truth hanged him. I strike in night so morning may hold peace." Catelyn kissed his brow. Something in the gesture turned him 5 years old again, when he had thought the world no larger than Winterfell's battlements. Then she stepped aside, a queen with no crown, and let him pass into legend or grave. The shallow draft skiffs slipped from the rushes like specters. River reeds brushed hulls with a hiss. Men crouched low, oarlocks wrapped in felt to mute creak, faces smeared with ash to dull the white of skin. Gray wind padded along the bank, unwilling to board a boat that smelled of tar and pitch, but would join when the land came again. Across the black water the gleam of King's Landing's lamps bobbed, indistinct in mist, like scattered embers of some dying hearth. The walls beyond were adamant red, and yet tonight, Robb Stark dreamed of them the pallid gray of his father's crypt. On the upstream heights above the mud gate, Jaime Lannister stared out from a narrow arrow slit in his tower cell. Even in chains, the Kingslayer's pride shone like his golden hair. 2 guards drowsed by the door, betting Cersei's fate upon loaded dice. Jaime thought of his sister's arms, of Tyrion's laughter lost in the cold river, of the wildfire that had failed to keep a wolf at bay. He stretched his wrists against manacles and smiled to himself. Somewhere the gods were laughing if Starks meant to steal a city with boats. Below the ramparts, the sluice gate yawned just above waterline. an unremarkable iron mouth used for refuse. 2 drunk gold cloaks lolled within, cloaks sodden, a dog gnawing at a bone between them. Neither noticed the silent prow that nudged the algae-slick stone. A black-clad figure rose, dagger glimmering, and with 2 blows the watchman slumped soundless. Robb himself hauled the bodies onto the deck. He would stain his young king's hands so none might claim others had done what he would not. Then he ducked beneath the iron teeth and into King's Landing. The tunnels ran foul with rot, but the band moved swift, torches shielded by helm and cloak. At length stone gave way to timber walkway, and the tunnel mouth opened behind a stack of rotting barrels in the courtyard of the butcher's market. Robb knelt beside Grey Wind, who had slipped in at the rear, and stroked the wolf's blood-streaked ears. "Find me the chain gate," he breathed in the direwolf's ear. Grey Wind vanished like smoke among alleyways. Glover's detachment broke east toward Flea Bottom, each a silent wraith. Edmure led 40 up Hook Street to secure Mager's holdfast drawbridge. Corin took a score to the bell tower atop Visenya's hill, where alarm bells slept. Robb marched with 100 north for the Lion Gate, moving through rain-slick streets that stank of night soil and summer damp. A washerwoman peeked from a shutter as the direwolf banner might have flown upon their backs. Robb raised a finger to lips. She withdrew without a word. At the Lion Gate, 2 red-cloaked sentries huddled beneath the arch, shields leaned and helms resting on their knees as they shared a skin of sour wine. From the shadows Robb watched their laughter drift skyward in fogged plumes. He signaled. 3 arrows whispered. 3 thuds spelled sleep eternal. Robb caught a helmed head before it clattered. With muffled efforts his men dragged the bodies to a dung pile. Then he laid his palm on the ponderous crossbar barring the gate. Iron sang as it lifted. Outside, Roose Bolton waited, astride a black courser slick with foam. 5,000 spears arrayed behind. When the crossbar lifted they flowed in without trumpet call, hooves muffled in wet dust. Bolt-stitched cloaks rippled like silent banners. Not a torch lit the advance. Only lightning quickened the sky, white veins illuminating a sea of pale, wet faces. As Roose's host pressed toward the Red Keep, Grey Wind bounded back to Robb, muzzle crimson. The direwolf's presence steeled the young wolf. Yet every beat of his heart thundered that each step deeper into Lannister-held stone placed his mother's last son inside a sepulchre. He thought of Sansa somewhere beyond these walls, perhaps scrubbing a table in the Tower of the Hand under some Lannister scullion's cruelty. She would hear no war horns tonight, merely the hush of doors opening under northern hands. Flea Bottom's warren erupted first. Glover's men encountered a gold-cloak patrol, and though swords clashed only moments, the screams pierced the hush. Hammers fell on helms, buckets dropped, pigs squealed. But the bells remained silent. Corin's work atop Visenya's hill had severed their ropes and cast the tongues into straw.e. Within the Red Keep, Queen Cersei stirred from her slumber to the metallic whine of gates unsealing. She roused Sir Mandon of the Kingsguard, whose white cloak smelled of stale sweat. "Find our captain," she hissed. "If Stannis lives we drown him in wildfire." Mandon buckled sword and vanished, leaving Cersei to clutch sweet Myrcella against her breast. She listened, and in the distance she fancied she heard a wolf howl. Robb's advance pushed to the base of Aegon's high hill. The outer barracks fell as sleeping men were dispossessed of swords. Some fought half-naked, some never woke. Sir Bryndon's bowmen overlooked the courtyard of the Gate of the Gods, loosing shafts into every torch that attempted to ignite. When the portcullis at the King's Gate began to rattle upward, Lannister soldiers seeking retreat, Bolton spears crashed against them from without, pinning the gate half-raised, a lethal throat through which screams poured. Grey Wind leapt the bodies and tore through the open bailey, his howl echoing. Fear spread quicker than steel. Stable boys fled into haystacks, rats seeking holes. Drunken sellswords who had only yesterday cursed the direwolf banners in jest, now threw down arms at the mere sight of its shadow. Above the yard Jaime Lannister heard the racket grow. The sky outside his slit brightened. Pink dawn or flicker of torches, he could not tell. The dice game at his door ceased. An explosion of snarls shook the corridor. A scream followed, cut short. Then the door creaked. Jaime raised shackled wrists. A stranger wearing North-forged mail stepped in. sagging slightly under the weight of an absurd greatsword. Ice reborn. Kingslayer, the man said with a grin. My king bids you follow. Jaime shrugged. A rescue or a noose? The man returned the grin. You'll know at sunrise. Along the street of sisters, fires began to bloom in blacksmiths' forges, sparked deliberate by Bolton's rear elements to prevent defenders from fashioning fresh blades. Yet Robb had ordered no wanton burning. At each hearth entrusted Stark men shepherded families to cellars. Old Valyrian facades wept as smoke curled up the walls, but the stone remained. Robb rode past, helm under arm, rain-stamping curls to his brow. Amid churned mud, he saw small folk kneeling, hands lifted not in supplication but in bewildered respect. This wolf king who spared them slaughter, unlike the lion before him. Near the Dragon Gate, Brienne of Tarth met Catelyn's vow. Freed from Renly's service and bearing scars of storm and sorrow, she had crossed the Blackwater on a fisher's skiff once rumors reached the stormlands of a wolf king seeking justice. She waded through carnage toward the great sept, carrying a lantern no bigger than her fist. The statue of the warrior loomed overhead, sword raised, as though saluting her arrival. So much blood, she murmured. Lightning revealed strewn bodies, Northmen and gold cloaks both. She knelt by a dying boy whose mail was stamped with a flayed man. Bolton, Dotkin. His lips bubbled crimson. She pressed her hand to his neck. You will see the stranger soon, little brother. He smiled, teeth red, and died. Brienne rose to thunder. The Red Keep's great courtyard had become a cauldron. Robb Stark, cloak soaked to blackness, stood before the Tower of the Hand, sword raised. Across from him knelt Sir Adam Marbrand, stripped of helm, presenting him the keys. I yield the guard, Marbrand proclaimed. Spare the city. Robb's throat felt raw. Where is my sister? Queenhood spar. Spared her. She's in the Maiden's Gallery. Robb nodded once. Glover hauled the crimson banner from the rampart and cast it into the mud, planting the direwolf in its stead. Bells might have rung then, the dawn bells of surrender, but Corrin's earlier work left only silence to mark Lannister defeat. Cersei barricaded herself in Maegor's holdfast, with Tommen clinging to her skirts. Her face a mask of pale fury, she paced before the massive carved doors. They will rape us, flay us, hang us, she breathed. Sir Boros Blount, trembling, muttered that the king, Tommen, must not be harmed. That perhaps surrender. Cersei slapped him so hard her ring cut his cheek. The Starks murdered my Joffrey, she whispered, voice cracking. I will see the wolf skinned. She poured 2 goblets of wine and a vial of nightshade into one. Within the Godswood Square behind the Sept of Baelor, Sansa Stark huddled barefoot in a brown dress, the rush matting slick beneath her. Her eyes closed in prayer, though she no longer believed gods answered. The sound of boots parted the drizzle. She opened her gaze onto her brother's face, pale in dawn's first blush. Robb, she whispered, not daring breath. He knelt in the mud, and for a heartbeat they were mere children stealing lemon cakes from the kitchens. Then Grey Wind's muzzle nudged her palm, and the world returned. Sobs racked her chest. Robb pressed his brow to hers. Father waits in the dark, but his dream lives, he murmured. Come. It is not safe here. As the sun seeped over the Blackwater, the river glimmered like fresh-quenched steel. Fires smoldered in 3 districts, but were already contained. Stark water-bearers formed chains to douse them. The gate stood open, banners crowned with direwolves flapping wet and triumphant. From the southern walls a single horn blew, the call for peace. Across the river camps of Tyrell and Lannister refugees watched, too few and too leaderless to answer. In the throne room, Robb dismounted steps slick with blood. The Iron Throne loomed with its jagged silhouettes. Jaime Lannister stood at sword point, unmanacled yet chained by honor. Kingslayer, Robb addressed him. You slew Aerys to save a city. Will you now swear no hand of lion lifts blade against one who saved it again? Jaime's smile was rueful. Your father called me Oathbreaker. My oaths broke kingdoms, Swear me one worthy and you have me." Robb sheathed his sword. "Guard my sister. Guard the people. Guard the realm from those who would burn it." Jaime laughed, a raw, hollow sound. "Done." He knelt, hair gleaming like tarnished gold beneath soot. Roose Bolton appeared behind, cloak heavy. "The city is ours, your grace." Robb noted Bolton's red hands and wondered what blood had paid that price. He would learn later of the dozen silent killings, the quick knives in doorways, the severed throats of pyromancers before they could unleash wildfire caches. For now he nodded. "Hold the gates and feed the hungry." Catelyn entered, escorted by Brienne. She spied her son upon the dais and near wept, but pride steadied her spine. She bowed before him. He knelt and embraced her. "My king," she said, voice small. "My mother," he replied. That afternoon, the rain ceased. The city's bells still lacked their tongues, but children gathered in squares to watch gray-cloaked soldiers mend broken stalls. Bread and salt were handed to each family. Northern smiths stoked the forges to repair hinges snapped during the night. Sansa walked among them with Brienne at her side. The small folk cheered softly, for fear lingered, but hope spread like dawn. They spoke of the direwolf king who spared their babies and paid for bread with silver stags, stamped E.A. Eddard's initials. In the Red Keep's solar, Cersei faced Robb Stark alone, her poison vial empty, stolen by a handmaid bribed with freedom. Tommen had been taken under Catelyn's watch, promised comfort and schooling, and the company of grey direwolf pups. Cersei's green eyes blazed. "You will never hold this city, Stark. The Reach will rise. The Westerlands will pay their weight in gold for your head." Robb poured a cup of wine and offered it. She slapped it away. "The Reach was promised marriage to my brother Renly's widow, and shares your hatred for lions," he answered. "Ask for your father's gold, I will return it. Melted and poured into the debts he owes the realm." Cersei spat, yet in her spittle trembled fear. She saw a boy with Eddard's iron in his spine, and Catelyn's fire in his gaze, and she knew the game had changed. As dusk returned, Robb stood atop Aegon's Hill beneath the first clear sky in a fortnight. Fire-slit banners flared along every wall. The grey direwolf of House Stark, the silver trout of Tully, the golden sunburst of Karstark, and above them all a new sigil, direwolf and trout entwined, crowned with 7-pointed star, his promise to rule in guardianship, not conquest. The river below whispered of snowmelt far north. The sea beyond tasted of salt tears both mourned and spared. He turned to Grey Wind, whose fur dried stiff with the blood of the long night. The direwolf's breath steamed in the cooling air. "Father," Robb whispered to the wind, "I have broken the dawn for you." Yet he knew victories weighed heavy in the marrow. A city won in silence must be ruled in noise. Petitions, famine, treachery. The young wolf had captured King's Landing overnight, but dawn revealed chains of a gentler sort settling upon his shoulders. Below, Sansa tuned a 7-stringed lute for the first feast of peace. Her voice warming on the first true song the city would hear since the bells fell silent. Jaime polished a tarnished suit of Kingsguard enamel, preparing to swear again an oath unbroken by politics. Catelyn penned letters to Winterfell describing a son become king and a daughter returned. Roose Bolton oversaw a pyre burial for soldiers of both cloaks, an odd reverence in his cold eyes. Corin half-hand scrawled maps of the wall, reminding Robb that winter crept closer than any lion host. In the stillness before feast, Robb gazed out across rooftops, where children chased each other with carved wooden wolves. The Red Keep glowed embered in sunset, yet to him it wore the quiet gray of home. When he closed his eyes he smelled snow. He imagined Arya somewhere beyond seas of stone, blade in hand, hearing whispers of a brother crowned by courage not iron. He imagined Bran dreaming of ravens and roots, whispering guidance on winter winds. He imagined his father's voice. The man who passes the sentence should swing the sword. He had passed it, mercy for the small folk and justice for the guilty, and swung blades himself. At dawn he would seat himself upon the throne, not to rule, but to bind the realm against Ice's long shadow. Tonight he allowed himself a single breath of triumph. The bells would ring again soon, and when they did, they would toll not for death or wedding or war, but for a night when the wolf grew wings, crossed a river in silence, and delivered a broken kingdom back to the light. Okay. Robb Stark's first dawn as Master of King's Landing bled into the longest day the capital had known since Aerys fell. Before the sun climbed fully up the sky, he had already met with 12 guildmasters, 3 maesters, 2 high septons, each striving to out-impreen the other, plus every manner of smallholder desperate simply to taste the bread his soldiers were handing out in the streets. None dared refuse passage to the young wolf, yet all feared him a little too, because he wore no crown and spoke of no coronation. He moved as if the Iron Throne were an uncomfortable chair he meant to mend, rather than a glory he craved. That unsettled men who measured ambition in sharp, familiar lines. Catelyn watched her son handle the swelling tide of petitioners from a gallery high above the throne room, fingers twined so tightly that the joints whitened. Brienne kept silent guard behind her, towering taciturn, her eyes never leaving the black mouths of passageways where a knife might emerge. What the realm saw that morning was a boy, king bruised by rain and smoke, yet speaking in a voice grown suddenly deeper. What Catelyn saw was a son who had crossed a labyrinth of dreams and disappointments in a single night, and emerged wearing a stranger's resolve. The transformation cut her with twin blades, pride and grief. By mid-morning the flow of courtiers thinned. The air grew heavy with the memory of wildfires past, and the sweat of anxious men. Robb climbed the dais but passed the throne, ascending a narrow spiral, until he stood at the balcony overlooking the city. To the west, the smoke of yesterday's forge fires rose in wobbling plumes. To the east, streaks of bright river water glimmered like silver knives. He forced himself to count breaths until he found 10, steady and even. A ritual that Bran had taught him long ago in the Godswood when the younger brother still wrestled only with scrambled sums, and not the shattered threads of his spine. With each breath he recalled a face. Arya's grin, Jon's quiet nod, Rickon's wild laughter, Theon's crooked smirk before the world soured between them. He told those faces, "I did not capture a kingdom to lose you to it." Behind him the scrape of boot leather warned of arrival. Jaime Lannister's golden hair caught the sunlight like a drawn sword. He approached until an arm's length remained and offered a courteous half-bow that might have been mocking, or merely wounded pride learning new lines. "You have yet to claim the throne publicly," Jaime murmured. "Some will mistake restraint for indecision." Robb's gray eyes slid from city to Kingslayer. "I will sit when sitting accomplishes something." "Sir Jaime, my father taught me the chair does not make the ruler." "Eddie, your father also taught that mercy may break you if you grant it to the wrong man." Jaime lifted manacled wrists. Robb had allowed the irons to remain, though the Kingslayer moved about freely. "You have given me a great deal more freedom than any sane boy might." Robb studied the chains. "If you betray me, your father gains nothing. He will barter my sister's safety for your head regardless, and you know that." He paused. "Serve me, and you bind Tywin Lannister's hands more surely than any dungeon." Jaime gave a bark of laughter that surprised them both. His smile folded in on itself into something almost shy. "I believed patriotism dead in me, Stark. Yet you coax it like a bard with an untuned harp." Then he sobered. "Very well, I guard your sister. But know the lion wakes when you falter." A gust carried the smell of fresh-baked oat bread from the market below. Both men inhaled as though starved. For a tenuous moment, the war that had ravaged Westeros felt remote. Men echo lost among new smells and sounds of bustling trade carts. But then the first courier arrived. The rider wore the green and gold of Highgarden. His horse had been run nearly to bone and foam. He knelt before the gatehouse, presenting a sealed letter signed by Lady Olenna Tyrell and her grandson Willis. The letter bore tidings both hopeful and perilous. Highgarden endorsed Robb Stark's just reclamation of the capital, yet only if certain conditions were met. The Reach would supply grain enough to feed a year's siege, replenish burned granaries, and align its navy with riverfolk flotillas. provided Robb wed Marguerite Tyrell before the harvest moon and recognized Willas as Hand of the King. Catelyn read the message beside her son at the small war council, convened in the solar overlooking the gardens once haunted by Targaryen children. Edmure Tully, ribs still bandaged, leaned heavily on a cane. Roose Bolton lounged cat-like, pale eyes half-lidded, betraying no desire but watchfulness. Sir Brynden tapped a gauntleted finger upon the map. Die. Sansa, newly bathed and clad in a soft sky-blue gown provided by tailors eager to please, sat quietly behind Robb, her hands folded, wary of all these men but determined to prove the council no place for trembling girls. Robb considered the letter. They would tether my reign to theirs before it stands. Brynden grunted. Better a leash of roses than a noose of lions. Bolton's smile curved like a paring blade. Roses possess thorns, your grace. They perfume the bedchamber until abruptly they pierce. Edmure coughed. Yet the realm must eat. Ironborn raids have gutted the western wheat fields. Riverland's barns burn faster than we can build. Without reach supply lines, we starve by winter. And now, Sansa spoke, surprising herself. Her voice cut through polish and protocol. If the Tyrells supported Joffrey once, they will support your enemies again should a better price appear. We must show them we can feed ourselves inside a year. Then marriage becomes alliance, not necessity. All eyes turned. Maester Vyman, summoned from the citadel to counsel the new regime, peered at her as if glimpsing a new stone in his mosaic. Robb's lips twitched in a faint half-smile that warmed her. Roose Bolton drummed pale fingers. Your sister's thought holds merit. The grain-rich riverlands could produce ample stores if Ironman raiders are driven off and river traffic secured. Lord Stark must fortify the Manderley fleet along the coast, free Deepwood Motte to funnel northern preserves south, and reclaim Torrens Square for road passage. Roose's voice remained silken, persuasive. Catelyn suspected the Flaidman banners were already calculating which flank to peel next. Robb rose. I will not promise my hand before I know what I can promise my people. Send word thanking Lady Olenna for her generous offer. Tell her we meet with gratitude, but must first guarantee safe roads and a just realm to welcome her granddaughter. He turned to Jaime. You will ride to Storm's End as my envoy. Gasps fluttered. Jaime arched a brow. May? You once served the realm as sworn shield, Robb said. Storm's End holds queens who yet owe you no love, but they do not know you serve me. They know only a kingslayer freed from chains to wag his tongue. Robb's tone chilled. Speak my words truly, or lose that tongue. Jaime smiled again, edged. The wolf sends the lion to coax Stag's bastion. A bard would call it poetry. He inclined his head. I shall ride at dawn. That evening, long tables crowded the great yard, where once Joffrey had commanded butchery. Now lanterns swung from lines, northern stews steamed in cauldrons, and Tyrell sweetcakes, sourced from a secret shipment already seized on the Rose Route, softened suspicion between Reachmen and Starkfoot. The small folk of King's Landing stood at edges, half ready to bolt if the feast proved illusion, but Robb ordered guards aside and welcomed them. Mothers with hollow cheeks, children with ribs showing, even a one-armed sellsword missing half his ear. They were all ladled broth by gray-cloaked warriors, who weeks before might have stabbed them in pitched alley skirmishes. Sansa found herself distributing trencher bread to orphans, perched atop collapsed wooden crates. Their eyes glistened with disbelief. She draped a little girl in her own cloak when night's breeze stiffened. No lords were present to applaud this kindness, but a bard later strummed a soft tune about the wolf maiden with the sky-born eyes. Sansa flushed, both pleased and distressed that songs sprouted in the city's broken stones so swiftly. Songs could shape hearts or curdle them. Robb did not sit at the high table. Instead he walked the yard, speaking with guild heads, smiths, farmers, Night's Watch recruiters. Gray wind stalked by his side, its presence enough to keep drunken squabbles from blooming. Yet tension writhed beneath the festive veneer. Eyes lingered on Bolton men more than any other. Catelyn, seated under the flicker of torches, watched those gazes like a hawk. When the moon rose, Robb withdrew with a small retinue to the Red Keep's Godswood. Thin, transplanted, nothing like Winterfell's, but still sacred. The quiet there brought him relief like cold water after a march. Sansa joined him. They knelt under the weirwood with its small pale face and crimson sap tears. He spoke into the hush. Father would have despised this throne room. The politics, the poisons. Sometimes I think I should burn that damned chair and build a council hall in its place. Bah. Sansa laid a hand on his sleeve. Father would have done his duty. So must you. Destroying symbols rarely erases what they mean. Robb smiled ruefully. You speak wiser each hour. The city taught me. Her voice wavered. It taught me fear and performance. But I also learned what stories can do. The people will follow the image they are given. Show them a king who listens, and they will listen for you. He nodded. They sat in silence, prayers unspoken but deeply felt. The next weeks unfurled in feverish succession. Jaime rode south, escorted by a picked dozen, half wearing lion sigils to announce his identity, half blank to whisper uncertainty. Rumors sprouted. Some said the Kingslayer would raise Storm's End for Lannisters. Some that he meant to father bastards with the Baratheon widow Margaery once spurned. Some that he carried wildfire vials to finish Aerys' old ambition. In truth, he carried a single parchment sealed by Robb Stark, promising clemency to any Stormlander lord who swore swords against Tywin's vengeance. Meanwhile, Roose Bolton requested leave to march his personal banners north, claiming he must secure the Dreadfort and rout lingering Ironborn along the stony shore. Robb granted permission but assigned 2 river captains to accompany him and observe needs for auxiliary aid. Bolton bowed acceptance, lips thin. Edmure whispered to his king that trusting a flayed man was trusting a snake to guard eggs. Robb responded, "So we keep the clutch warm enough the snake dreads biting." Edmure himself departed with Blackfish for the Riverlands, carrying decrees to rebuild holdfasts under direct crown expense, financed by treasures salvaged from Cersei's vaults. The sight of Lannister gold, stamped with a direwolf, sowed peculiar dreams among war-torn villages. They began to call the currency the Howl. More songs. In King's Landing, Brienne oversaw refitting of the city watch. She dismissed corrupt captains, promoted common swordsmen who displayed honesty, introduced training drills, borrowed from Renly's Rainbow Guard. She wore her new cloak, gray with white direwolf, and endured both admiration and jest, though few laughed within sword's reach of her. One dawn she led the newly named Iron Wolves through vantage drills along the repaired outer wall. Sansa observed. A boy no older than Podrick Payne blundered his spear flip. Brienne corrected him gently before having him repeat. Sansa smiled at their exchange and turned back toward the keep, only to glimpse a shadow slip through an arch. Too swift, too purposeful. She followed. Down twisting stairs into old storage. Damp stones. Smell of mildew. At corridor's end a candle flickered, then winked out. She called softly, drew no answer, and nearly screamed when a gauntlet gripped her shoulder. Bolton's captain, Steelshanks Walton, eyes gleaming. "Lady Stark shouldn't wander," he murmured. "King's Landing holds corners yet unpacified." She freed herself. "I have iron wolves above." He bowed, smug. "But no wolves here. Allow me escort." She shook her head and stepped past him, heart hammering. She would speak of this to Robb later. Far north, at the wall, ravens began to arrive, carved with black wax. Jon Snow, now Lord Commander, read of his brother's victory with a flare of relief so fierce he feared it a betrayal of his vows. Samwell observed the tears glinting in Jon's eyes and said nothing. But the ravens brought darker words as well. The others moved again beyond Frostfangs. Hardhome's fires vanished. Wildling scouts reported shapes beneath the snow, armies forming. Jon penned a letter that very night. "Winter is closer than crowns." He addressed it to King Robb Stark and prayed the southern ravens would not falter. By early autumn, Tywin Lannister's host swept across the Gold Road. He marched 30,000, bolstered by mercenaries hired from the free cities, companies in striped silks who fought for clinking coin alone. His outriders pushed past the ruins of Sarsfield, retook the Mummers' Ford, captured Maidenpool before Karstark outriders could reinforce. Word of the King's Landing coup had reached him too late to retake the city swiftly, but Tywin intended to starve it out. Yet every village he passed greeted him with thin larders and stories of how the new king's men had already seized grain under it. The howl coins he insisted be melted were already paying his own sellswords. At his war tent outside Duskendale, Tywin studied a map by lantern. Lord Kevin murmured caution. He has unified the capital. The Tyrells tilt to him. The Tullys regroup. Even Doran stays silent. Tywin's face remained a mask of iron discipline. Rats unify when a new cat arrives. We show them this cat claws deeper. He dispatched emissaries to Braavos to secure greater loans, promising repayment in precious Lannisport. Gem Cassius. But Braavosi lenders had begun to invest in northern timber ventures, brokered by Sir Davos Seaworth, whom Stannis, lost in retreat, had aligned with Robb in exchange for bread for Storm's End. When the Iron Bank asked Tywin for collateral, he offered Casterly Rock. They demanded hostages. Tywin refused. Loans stalled. His army's coffers thinned. In King's Landing, the small council took new shape. Maester Vyman replaced Pycelle. Willis Tyrell rode north to treat with Robb personally despite his lame leg, bringing seeds of barley, sacks of dried fruits, and a cunning smile. He bore letters from the Lady Olenna praising Sansa's poise and inquiring about any handsome young lords now unattached, excepting, of course, your charming Robb, whose bed is pre-promised to a kingdom. Robb greeted Willis beneath the half-repaired dragon gate. They clasped wrists like equals not strangers, and for 2 nights Willis remained in the capital, teaching master smiths from the Reach to fashion plow blades for Riverland's soils. Robb in turn promised him a seat on the council, overseeing healing of burned fields. The prospect thrilled Willis more than marriage pacts. He departed with new respect. That same week, Arya Stark arrived at the Mudgate, disguised among a group of Taroshi merchants. She slipped through city alleys until a butcher boy recognized the Stark jaw, startling her into flight. Brienne cornered her within a potter's shed near Visenya's Hill, where Arya attempted to hamstring the night until Sansa arrived shouting her childhood nickname. "Arry, stop!" The sisters were unified in tears and bruises. Arya's face had hardened like leather. She carried a thin blade called Needle and spoke of coins bearing faceless men. But when Robb gathered her into an embrace, she collapsed against his shoulder, murmuring, "I tried to get here sooner." Robb later presented Arya to the City Watch as Lady Arya, Knight of Winter's Blood, sworn to the Iron Wolves. The small folk roared approval. Songs multiplied again. Verses of the Wolf Maiden and her sword as slim as hope. With winter's first bite in the wind, ravens blackened King's Landing's dovecote. News of Tywin's march, of Ironborn burning Fair Isle, of White Walkers glimpsed beyond the wall, all arrived at once like waves colliding. Robb convened his council in the old Tower of the Hand, because the Solar's windows allowed unblinking view of the North Road, rising like a promise or threat from the hills. Maester Vyman summarized. F. Tywin joins with Victarion Greyjoy. Lannisport Gold and Pike's longships could strangle every coastal route. Food fails, the Tyrell Alliance fractures. The capital riots and the Iron Throne falls as fast as you claimed it. Robb turned to Arya. How many silent streets remain? Passages known only to you and the baker's boys. Enough to move a shadow host, she replied. But shadows don't feed mouths. He nodded. Yet they can open gates. We cannot meet Tywin on an empty belly. We must cut his supply line before he strangles ours. Glover pointed at the map. The Gold Road curves through the Westerlands. Steep passes easily collapsed. Send sappers, stall his wagons. Brynden disagreed. Collapse passes and you trap him. But hunger will still drive his foragers into innocent lands while he awaits release. Better to lure him into a battlefield of our choosing, one where grain and water lie beyond his reach. Robb's fist sealed slowly around air. We bleed him on Blackwater again, only this time upriver, where his wagons must ford. He traced a tributary north of Duskendale. We flood the low meadows, burn the bridges, lure his horses into mire. Bolton murmured, Myers swallow men but spit out corpses. Disease follows, a cruel strategy. Robb met his pale gaze. Cruelty, chosen by Tywin's ambition. We answer in defense, not delight. Sansa rose. If we must fight, we must also protect. Evacuate villages along that tributary in secret. House Reed's marshlanders know every bog trick. Send riders to Greywater Watch. End. Her proposal passed. Arya volunteered to guide the evacuations under guise. Her face shifting with dyes and illusions, she claimed to have learned across the narrow sea. Brienne would command reserve infantry to ferry refugees south toward Bitterbridge where Tyrell wagons waited. The plan spun into motion like a loom. Each thread hummed with peril. Night fell quick and early now. Under torchlight, Robb wrote letters to Jon at the Wall, to Lord Manderley at White Harbor, to Sir Davos on the Roserad. Hold fast, send what food you can by sea. Winter is upon us. When the quills blotted, he pressed wax with the dire wolf seal and stared at the glinting red before it cooled. He understood finally the weight that had bent Eris to madness. Every message carried souls in its curves. Live or die, thrive or starve. Grey Wind lifted his head and growled low. The door opened. Catelyn entered, cloak wrapped tight, though the fire burned warm. Her gaze lingered on her son's stooped shoulders. You cannot hold every stone from falling, she whispered. Trust your bannermen to catch their share. He placed Quill down. I trust them, but I fear the cracks within more than the siege without. She approached and unfolded a silk parcel. Inside lay a circlet of dark iron inlaid with river-water moonstones. Simple, stark. Wear this tomorrow at dawn mass, she said. Let them see a king still grounded, a crown that reminds rather than elevates. Robb lifted the circlet. It weighed less than he expected, yet carried gravity that bowed his head. Will it mend cracks? It will remind you why you mend them. Before first light, the silent streets woke with hush of anticipation. The city bells, tongues reforged, stood ready at Brienne's signal. In the sept courtyard, Robb presented himself in mail and surcoat, iron circlet resting on auburn curls. Sansa and Arya flanked him like dawn and dusk, one calm, one restless. Catelyn watched from steps beside Willis Tyrell and Maester Vyman, and a newly arrived Prince Doran's envoy from Dorne bringing oranges and neutrality. The High Septon spoke prayers of the Seven, but Robb bowed first to the weirwood branch he had placed in water before the altar, sign that gods old and new shared dominion. When he straightened, he addressed the throng. I claim no divine right, nor lineage above others. I claim service. The chair of swords tears flesh as easily as cloth. I wear this iron band to remember the North's mines and the river's moonlit ripples. He lifted the circlet briefly, then set it upon his brow. Bells rang. First the mother, then the father, then a chorus, their voices brazen and bright. The roar of approval surged like ocean tide. But somewhere beyond walls, Tywin's legions marched. Jaime returned that afternoon, worn but alive, bearing signatures from Stormlander lords. Baratheon, Swan, Caron, vowing allegiance to King Robb in exchange for relief grain and protection against ironborn pirates. He also carried one more thing, a sealed letter from Lady Brienne of Tarth's father, offering her hand in betrothal to assure Stormland's loyalty. Jaime delivered it without a grin. He merely said, "She deserves to choose." Robb accepted. He summoned Brienne privately. She read the letter, cheeks reddening. "My father seeks security," she muttered. "I cannot fault him." She met her king's eyes. "But my place is here." Sword in hand. "Then here you stay," Robb said. "No man shall command your heart but you." For this Brienne knelt and pledged her sword anew, tears glimmering like dew on steel. 7 nights later, scouts raced down the King's Road screaming of Tywin's approach. Refugees from the flooded tributary spilled behind them. Safe, thanks to Arya's shadow guidance, but ragged. Robb's host mustered on the fields beyond King's Landing. Riverlords, Northmen, Stormlanders, Iron Wolves. The Tyrell army marched to join but was days out yet. They would face Tywin first alone. Under a sky bruised purple, Robb rode the lines. Not one banner of Bolton had returned. Roose had yet to march south. That absence felt like ice water between shoulder blades, but Robb could not delay. He lifted his sword. "My father taught me to fear the cost of pride," he shouted. "Let every drop spilled by a winter where children sleep warm. Let every blow land for those still rebuilding homes tires burned." The army roared. At dawn, two armies collided north of the Blackwater. Tywin's numbers dwarfed Robb's but slogged through marshy ground cunningly drenched by dammed canals the night before. Wagons stuck, knights drowned beneath thrashing destriers. Stark spearmen feinted retreats, then vanished into sedge to spear ankles through leather. Arrow volleys from Glover's longbow companies turned the rising sun into a cloud of shadows. Yet Tywin adapted swiftly. He formed shield walls on drier rise, unleashed sellsword crossbows, and pushed center lines hard. Halfway through morning, thunder shook the sky. No storm, but wildfire. Lannister sappers had found a hidden cache left from King Aerys's reign. Green flame roared across reeds, engulfing friend and foe alike. Panic rippled. Robb spurred his courser through choking smoke, calling to regroup near a half-sunken stone tower. There he found Brynden Tully wounded, arrow in thigh, still shouting orders. Edmure's banner barely held the left. Stormlander pikes wavered under Volantine mercenary charge. When all threatened collapse, the bells of King's Landing rang again, this time in grim cadence. From the south, horns answered, Tyrell trumpets and Dornish warpipes. The long-promised reinforcements surged, glittering like a flowering desert. Olenna had sent her thorns after all, joined by Prince Arianne Martell's outriders, sun spears burning bright. Trapped between marsh and fresh armies, Tywin ordered retreat. But the flooded tributary had swollen behind him. Engineers had dismantled his temporary bridges on approach, expecting to rebuild after victory. Horses balked at water. Panic spiraled. In desperation, Tywin led a corps of household knights toward drear western ridge. Straight into a pack of gray banners with crimson flayed men. Roose Bolton had arrived finally, but under Lannister pay, his swords carving a path away from the battlefield's heart. Tywin seized the chance, accepted Bolton's treachery as providence, and vanished across the ridge, leaving half his host mired. Robb saw the flayed man banners turn, felt betrayal sink talons. He could pursue, but the marsh devoured pursuit. He instead rallied to salvage wounded, quell wildfire blazes, and accept the surrender of thousands of sellswords who had seen their gold master flee. That evening, under smoke-orange sky, Robb learned the cost. 5,000 of his had fallen, among them Sir Brynden Tully, who died smiling, saying he'd at last seen a trout leap higher than any lion. Stormlord Selwyn Caron lay with pikes through his side. Edmure lived but fevered. Willis Tyrell's escort shattered though he survived unscathed. The ground reeked of burnt flesh and bog water. Yet King's Landing stood, fed, and free. In the council tent, Robb sat, hands black with ash. Sansa cleaned wounds on his cheek with a damp cloth, speaking soft words of Winterfell hearths. Arya leaned near, recounting how she ambushed 3 mercenaries at River's Bend. Brienne stood guard at the entrance, bruised but unbowed. Jaime arrived clutching a captured Bolton knight's helm. He tossed it before Robb. "Your snake shed skin." Jaime's voice held tired triumph. "We cut it free on the ridge, but the head slithered off with the lion." Robb turned the helm, flayed man glaring. "We hunt him later. For now, we heal." Winter's first snow dusted the capital 2 weeks later. It fell gentle, clinging to broken ramparts like new cloth on old wounds. Children gathered flakes in laughter. Older ones hurried to fill cellars with salted fish shipped from White Harbor. The realm's arteries pumped again. Tyrell grain reached river villages. Storm's End sent oysters. Dorne oranges staved scurvy in crowded streets. The Iron Wolves patrolled nightly. Crime sank to its lowest mark in memory. Within the throne room, under banners now depicting a direwolf howling above 7 stars. Robb finally mounted the Iron Throne to render judgment. He wore the iron circlet. Beside him stood Sansa to read petitions and Arya to keep order, her hand resting on needle. The hall overflowed with representatives of 6 kingdoms, the West absent. Robb's first decree: abolition of forced tithes that had ravaged poor farmers under Cersei's reign. Instead, voluntary levies scaled to harvest success. Second decree: any medieval concubine's children henceforth recognized as lawful provided paternity acknowledged. An echo of Joan's uncertain standing, a gift to bastards scorned. Third decree: the wall fortified under royal purse. Wildlings south of it offered amnesty if they farmed abandoned northern plots. Many gasped at such radical pronouncements, yet hope flickered anew. One day, a raven arrived from the citadel. Samwell Tarly's research confirmed the long night's omens aligning once more. The white raven soon followed. Winter, official. Robb summoned every maester, lord, and tradesman. He unveiled a new project: forging dragonglass weapons, smelting Valyrian shards anew, erecting beacon towers along the King's Road. Jaime offered Lannister mines still under his command since Tywin's flight. He would grant obsidian seams in the Westerlands, payment for crimes of the past. Robb accepted with solemn nod. As months wheel toward true snowdrifts, the realm still bleeds in places, but knits in others. Tywin Lannister hides in Castamir's gutted vaults with Bolton as his unwanted guest. Rumor claims their alliance sours over debt. Across the sea, Daenerys' storm-born eyes Westeros, hearing of a Stark king not so unlike herself. In Winterfell's ruins, the weirwood whispers Bran's name into cold winds carrying ravens south. Yet inside King's Landing a hearth cracks merrily in the solar where once Cersei paced viper-slow. Robb sits at a map table, carved fresh of northern spruce, Sansa beside scribbling new trade routes, Arya sprawled sharpening needle, Brienne and Jaime playing uneasy Savas at a sideboard, Catelyn humming a winter song she once sang in Winterfell's nursery. Robb sets his quill down, rises, and opens the window. Snowflakes drift in, landing on his wrists like tiny ghosts. He closes his eyes. A memory stirs. He's a boy again, chasing summer through drifts, Bran laughing, a direwolf's howl rolling over pines. He breathes, and when he exhales the cold, he also exhales fear. Night will come with terror beyond walls and storms beyond politics, but tonight, the city sleeps under honest snow for the first time in a generation. Robb Stark, the young king who captured King's Landing overnight, now captures a rarer prize, a fragile peace, cradled like embers cupped against wind. He turns to his gathered kin and smiles. "Tomorrow," he says, "we begin again." They nod, weary but willing. Outside, bells toll the hour. Their chimes mingle with children's laughter, echoing off icy stones. Somewhere distant, a direwolf howls, not of hunger, but of guardianship. And amid the ancient towers, iron and snow whisper together, forging the realm's new heartbeat, steady and strong beneath a crown of river moonstones and northern resolve. Snow floated like ash from invisible braziers, pale motes drifting through the crenellations of the Red Keep and gathering in silent whirls on cracked flagstones. Somewhere in the night, a staggered chord of bells tolled the 7th hour, but the sound seemed muffled, as though the very air were thick with wool. Robb Stark stood alone on the rampart above the king's gate, gloved hands clasped behind his back, iron circlet silvered by moonlight. Below him, the lanterns of the lower city glimmered beneath a thin veil of white, each flicker a small defiance against the cold. He wondered how many hearths burned without bread, how many mothers tucked children beneath blankets, donated by Tyrell looms, and whispered prayers to nameless gods that spring would come before the stores ran dry. Footsteps approached, soft against the dusting of snow. Jaime Lannister materialized from the stair arch, cloak drawn close, a thin crust of frost in his beard. He halted 2 paces off. "Your patrols report the Roserad passable as far as Bitterbridge," he said, voice low to spare the sentries. But Ironborn sails cut the mander again. Lord Redwing's grain fleet cannot reach us until the straits clear. He smiled without humor. Hungry cities grow ugly. Robb nodded. I know. Silence pooled. He did not turn. When you were hand for a breath after Robert fell, what was the first suitor to the throne to plead hunger? Jaime's laugh steamed white. A tanner's guildmaster from Crackclaw Point, come begging hides and salt beef for his men, or they'd flay the forest floor itself. Cersei ordered the gold cloaks to throw him out the east gate. He marched home, held a feast of bark soup, and started a rebellion that never rose high enough to be noticed. He tapped the parapet. Famine ferments men slower than pride, but deeper. Robb finally faced him. You speak of Cersei freely now. I am free of her. The Kingslayer's gaze drifted across rooftops powdered white. Or I pretend to be. The ghosts of old oaths linger even when the chains fall. It was never oaths that bound her, Robb said. It was need. He looked south to the black ribbon of the Roserad. We break need and ghosts both if we feed the realm. The Reach cannot bear all burden. The North must give more. And Jaime's eyebrow arched. And what do you give the North in exchange? They have starved through campaigns of your making. My crown if I ask too much, Robb answered. But they'll give, because winter cuts us all. He dismissed the Kingslayer and descended into the keep, where torchlight painted gold on granite. Sansa waited in the council antechamber, reading a ledger by Glowglob. Donation tallies, shipment manifests, the lifeblood of a capital. When she lifted her eyes, he saw fatigue in the violet bruises beneath. Yet her smile warmed. Jones Raven arrived, she said. He writes that Eastwatch's docks ice over by the hour. The wildlings sent to farm Dustfinger Vale have harvested their first winter barley. Good. Robb took the letter. Jones' hand was blunt, firm. Darkness moves. Send dragon glass. Fire fodder low. Hope you live. He traced the iron gall strokes, then folded the parchment and slid it into his sleeve. Sansa searched his face. You mean to ride north? Not yet. First we put Lannister to bed. Then so. Deep beneath what had once been the dragon pit, Qhorin Halfhand pushed a sputtering torch ahead of him. The tunnel's roof hung low, forcing him to stoop despite the stoop the wall had carved into his shoulders years ago. Behind him stalked Arya, hair bound tight, eyes long since grown comfortable with gloom. Snowflakes drifted down the open vents above, dissolving on her cloak like chalk dust. Qhorin halted at a rusted grate half buried in silt. With a grunt he shifted it aside. The pyromancers logged 37 vaults, he rasped. We've emptied 36. This last. He touched scoring on the stone. Lannister's men tried once, then sealed it. Too unstable. Smells like rotted eggs and fear. Aerys meant to light the city, Arya said. Maybe Tywin, too. Maybe Robb's sister someday, Qhorin replied. Half jest but all warning. They crawled inside. The chamber stank of chemicals and moldy parchment. A single jar of wildfire, green glow pulsing faint as a cat's eye in murk, rested inside a cradle carved from black oak and Valyrian steel filaments. Qhorin exhaled. Leave it, Arya whispered. He shook his head. The Night King will not falter for lack of swords alone. We may need dragonflame we can carry. Arya's fingers brushed needle's pommel. Fire is alive. Give it breath and it eats the world. My brother would not want this. Qhorin's face, half-shadowed, softened. Then your brother must learn a king sometimes chooses which devil devours the lesser good. He lifted the jar with infinite care, wrapping it in a net of chainmail lined with lamb's wool. We store it in the vault beneath Maegor's holdfast, sealed 3 times. And pray. Now. As they left, Arya glimpsed scratched lines on the vault wall. 3 interlocking spirals, sharp as fresh cuts. They had not been there when she entered. She rubbed them once, smearing frost crystals. Beneath the smear, stone gleamed slick and strangely warm. She told no one. Casterly Rock's sea-carved halls rang with the hammer of coin on marble, as Tywin Lannister hurled a gilded goblet across his solar. Golden wine splashed against a warrior maiden tapestry, droplets sliding like sap down woven hair. Roose Bolton leaned against a pillar, expression mildly amused. Candlelight danced on the leech-whitened stretch of his cheeks. "We possess the shield of the rock," Tywin snarled. "Yet every port from Fair Isle to Old Oak bars our ships. Merchants price bread at silver weight. Bravos denies loans unless I deliver hostages and rights to Lannisport itself. And my own bannermen speak of parley with the wolf." He turned on Bolton. "Your promise was leverage. How do we wield it?" Bolton toyed with a silver flaying knife. "Leverage lies where flesh and fear intersect, my lord. We cannot starve the capital from afar, but we may yet cut its heart." He produced a rolled map, unspooled it across Tywin's writing desk. "Here, Storm's End. Its larders feed Robb's campaigns. One stroke severs his arteries." He pointed farther east. "And Dragonstone, seat of a would-be queen orphaned of men. Send her a gilded envoy bearing golden lions. Promise ships, promise Westerland's steel, promise vengeance on a boy who took her throne. She fields dragons, you field mine." Tywin considered the map's ink strokes. After a moment he smiled, cold and small. 3 days before the New Year's moon, Daenerys Stormborn stood upon the wind-torn ramparts of Dragonstone, cloak snapping as Drogon swept overhead like a living thunderhead. His shadow skittered across surf and basalt, a stain of deeper darkness. Beside her, Missandei braced against the gust. "The Lannister envoy waits, my queen." Daenerys' mouth tightened. "With honey and stings, no doubt." She watched Drogon circle, firelit breath blooming in rhythmic bursts that warmed her cheeks even at this height. "Robb Stark writes courteous letters. He offers alliance against a winter darkness, marriage with some cousin, trade in dragonglass stock. He makes no claim to the Iron Throne save service." She shook snow from her lashes. "Yet the wolves killed Rhaegar once in banners red and black. Can I trust them now?" Missandei's brown eyes softened. "Blood alone does not weave fate. Your enemies become allies when the world demands unity." Daenerys turned. Spear of wind, flicking her silver-white braid. "And what does the world demand, Missandei?" "Survival." That evening, Daenerys sat in Dragonstone's audience hall facing Sir Kevan Lannister, sent to her by his brother with chests of gold and promises of ships. He bent knee, spoke of youthful misrule in King's Landing, painted Robb Stark a savage in a northern pelt chair. Daenerys listened, silent. At length she said, "You fear the boy's wolves howling at your door. Yet you come not to make peace with him, but to set dragon upon direwolf, fire upon ice." She reached into a brazier, seized a glowing coal barehanded. Burn did not claim her, and dropped it into the goblet of wine before Kevan. Steam hissed. "I have burned for ambition once. Never again for another man's fear." She dismissed him with nothing but cold ash and a warning. "Tell your brother Winter has no sides, only survivors." Drogon roared from the courtyard, shaking cinders from the rafters. At Winterfell's Kingsroad gate, Wyman Manderley's supply wagons creaked under their burden of salt cod, pickled herring, and knotted ropes of garlic. Lady Alice Karstark rode ahead on a shaggy palfrey, furs white as the breath streaming from horses' nostrils. She raised a gloved hand to Jon Snow, who waited with his black brothers flanking. Pale morning light revealed the strain in her eyes. "We counted 12 wildling families settled in Barrowton's cellars," she said. "Some speak of white shadows along the Barrow Downs." Jon's jaw hardened. "We moved them behind the wall." "Your pardon, Lord Commander," Alice replied. "But they will not go. They claim the shadows walk beyond it." Hours later, Jon climbed the broken eastern tower, scanning the tree line. Far off, something pale flickered among frosted pines. It vanished. He felt the old terrible knowing rise. His brother's crown mattered less than the dead's march. He sent a raven with one line. "They come." King's Landing awoke on the 29th day of the wolf moon to a strange omen. Tracks of blood meandered across the fresh snow from Maegor's holdfast to the Sept ruins. Guards followed, discovering the corpse of Steelshanks Walton nailed upright to the mother's statue, flayed skin draped over stone arms like a cloak. His face had been turned inward, flayed from skull, reformed into a mask, sewn back with hair tacked by rusted nails. In his mouth glimmered gold coins. Lannister lions melted and reshaped into 7-pointed stars. Beneath his heels lay a parchment daubed in dried crimson. The North remembers who truly serves. Brienne arrived first, helm tucked under arm, disgust and fury mingling. Sansa knelt in snow, whispering a prayer. Arya examined the parchment's scrawl. Not Bolton's hand. She murmured. Too messy. She lifted a coin. But someone wants us to think so. Robb ordered the corpse burned. In council he addressed the captains. Whomever sows fear within our walls will learn the wolf's bite. Yet he saw suspicion flicker between Riverlords and Northern Thens, Stormlander pikemen and Tyrell outriders. Unity, fragile as hoarfrost, cracked. That night, an assassin in maester's robe crept into the rookery with vials of sourleaf and manticore venom. He reached for ravens bound north, only to hear a blade-clear scabbard behind him. Jaime's voice, low, "You'd poison letters." Strange method. The would-be maester whirled, brandishing a dagger. Jaime parried with least effort, catching wrist. Twisting. Bones cracked. The man gurgled, and vanished, face splitting into mottled gray before collapsing shapeless. Arya stepped from shadows, eyes wide. "Aceless man," she murmured. She retrieved a coin from the figure's sash, the one she had once carried in Bravos. But this coin bore 3 spirals etched with murderous precision. Robb studied it by candlelight. Someone buys death dear. Arya trembled. Death may need no coin at all. When the many-faced god hungers, he takes. She flicked the coin into the brazier. Flames licked it, bending metal into molten tears. The Winter Council convened on the first true blizzard. Lords rastered by region. Tyrell, Martell, Tully, Manderley, Swan. Gathered beneath the great hall's soaring ribs. Gray tapestries billowed in drafts from arrow slits. On a dais of black oak, Robb stood cloaked in direwolf fur. Beside him, Sansa and Arya. Catelyn wore a maester blue shawl. Sign that she spoke for healing. Jaime watched flanking, hand resting on pommel. Robb spoke without flourish. Word from the wall, the dead advance. Word from Dragonstone. Dragons may fly. Word from Casterly Rock. Tywin prepares siege engines with stolen Stormland's timber. 3 tides converge. He unfurled 3 banners. First, a white fabric soaked in firemilk. A direwolf howling among 12 7-pointed stars. Sigil of a unified realm. Second, the broken wheel of the Targaryen Triskelion. Shards reforged into a sword and torch. Daenerys proposed new device, sent with a raven bare hours ago as token of pledge. Third, a cloth dyed midnight, sewn with dragonglass shards forming a crown. No house heraldry. Robb said at last. The North forges an order, he said, guardians sworn to no name but life. The Night's Watch reborn for all realms. Any man or woman may join. Any who do join kneel to no lord save the common breath of this world. The black cloak will shield all creeds. The watch will ride with wildlings under Jon Snow. He paused. My brother will march south with our worst fears, and we will meet him with fire and steel. Murmurs rippled. Shock, skepticism, grudging respect. Willis Tyrell raised his withered leg slightly. What of Tywin's hammer to our west? Stannis Baratheon will check him, Robb answered. Gasps. Dot. Sansa's head snapped. He lives? He does, Robb said. A letter came from Lys. Stannis sails under new guise, guided by Sir Davos to the Arbor. He will land with Melisandre's Red Priests, preaching a war of light versus night. We give him the field of Duskendale. Let lions and stags bleed each other while we ride north. And no. Not all cheered. Glover scowled. While they duel, who keeps King's Landing? Cersei. The hall stilled. Robb continued. She remains our prisoner. We treat her as guest, yet she commands a sharp mind. We name her regent of the capital, under guard. She will believe herself in power again, so she will not flee. And if Tywin retakes the city, he finds it filled with wildfire caches we alone know how to quench. Catelyn's eyes flared horror. You gamble with innocence. Robb's voice thinned. Every choice is a gamble. This one buys time. Jaime's knuckles whitened on pommel, but he said nothing. The council broke after hours of wrangling. When the lords had gone and torches guttered low, Robb sat alone beneath the vault of swords, a hallway where Ned once displayed fallen foe brands. He felt ghost iron watch him, Longclaw, Bright Roar, Ice's broken half. He whispered, Father, guide my hand. A chill touched his spine. He turned, memory only. Yet gray eyes imagined a tall shadow in stark armor nodding once, solemn. The exodus began at dawn. Columns of black-cloaked volunteers marched through the Lion Gate, joined by wildlings herded south by Night's Watch outriders. Grain carts rolled north with them, guarded by Tyrell archers, and dwarf war engines fashioned by Gendry Waters under Tully's supervision. Sansa oversaw allocation, handwriting receipt parchments, until her fingers cramped. She stood with Arya at the gate as the first unbroken stream of humanity in living memory flowed not into King's Landing, but out toward the wall. Jon rode at the vanguard, astride a shaggy gray mare. He halted before his sisters. No words at first, just 3 sets of stark eyes brimming. He dismounted, embraced them. Gray Wind and Ghost circled each other, tails low but friendly. Jon pressed a bronze token into Sansa's palm. It opens the night gate in the wall if all else fails. He caught Arya's shoulder. Keep her safe. Arya poked his chest. I'm keeping everyone safe. He faced Robb last, their foreheads touching. I never sought crowns. I never sought thrones, Robb replied. But we are given what others need of us. He drew a small pouch from his belt. Inside shimmered obsidian arrowheads, carved like black flame. Kill the first white yourself. For courage. After that, share. Jon smiled thinly, nodded, mounted, and rode. The host wound north, a serpent of black and silver across fields already buried in snowdrifts. From battlements, city folk watched. Some weeping, some cheering, most silent. Sansa lingered long after the last banner disappeared into flurries, staring at the white haze as though she could still see them. Storm clouds swallowed the horizon over Duskendale when Stannis Baratheon's fleet anchored. Ser Davos strode ashore first, planting a new banner. The Baratheon stag crowned with a blazing heart of Arlar. Tywin's outriders on the hills froze at the sight. Behind Davos marched men in red leathers, chanting hymns of light. Fires winked on sails, illuminating Stannis' gaunt face. Tywin's war council fell to chaos. Roose Bolton urged immediate retreat, to draw Stannis toward Casterly Rock, where winter storms hampered dragons, if Daenerys turned that way. But Tywin, his pride wounded by too many withdrawals, ordered lines drawn at the town's ridge. We smashed the stag, the wolf will whimper. Ravens beat from Roose's tent that night nevertheless. Secret dispatches to unknown allies. On the Iron Islands, damp wind rattled Iron Victory's rigging. Asha Greyjoy brushed snow from her shoulders. Snow, in Pike, ominous. Beneath the cliff towers, Daeus, her uncles argued. Victarion thirsted for Lannister gold. Euron dreamed of dragons and horn magic. Aeron Damfair prayed to drown them all. Asha rolled eyes. While you squabble, the world unravels. She took ship with a slim retinue and steered east for White Harbor, bearing terms. The Ironborn would raid Lannisport itself and trade for clemency and farmland on the Trident's Isles after the war. Wyman Manderley received her respectfully if cautiously. A fortnight later, blacksail longships slipped into the port of Lannisport under fog and carried off half Tywin's grain reserve without spilling blood. The city guard awoke to find seagulls pecking at messages pinned with Kraken ink. The salt pays its debt to the snow. In King's Landing, a hush pervaded the streets. Many soldiers had departed with the watchbound exodus. Brienne commanded what remained. A lean cadre of iron wolves, orphan squires, and newly sworn city watched loyal to coin minted with the howl. She patrolled nightly, blonde hair silvered by starlight, sword across her back. One such patrol found Cersei standing on the ruined sept steps, eyes cast skyward. Snowflakes clung to her eyelashes like crystals. Brienne approached. "My lady, it grows late." Cersei did not glance away from the night. "When I was a girl, I thought snow romantic. Then I married Robert Baratheon and learned it is simply cold." She turned, gaze falling on Brienne's cloak. "You serve him with such devotion. Does loyalty taste sweet?" Brienne shifted. "It tastes of duty." Cersei's smile cut. "Duty is a chain. He will trade your honor when winter deepens." "I trade my life for the realm," Brienne answered. "Honor is what remains." Cersei's laughter cracked the quiet. "Remain? When the dead walk, nothing remains." She stepped closer, breath frosting. "I saw a dead rise once." Gregor Clegane's corpse twitched under Qyburn's blades. "The smell haunts my dreams. I breach these walls. I shall drink nightshade before letting a Stark claim my carcass." She brushed past the tall knight, leaving only perfume and despair. Brienne watched her vanish into shadows and wondered which woman would break first, the prisoner or the guard. Daenerys crossed the narrow sea in the chill of second winter moon, with her 3 dragons winging overhead. The fleet chartered from Volantis bore unsullied in thick cloaks, and Nethi healers bearing lemon balm salves. Snow fell on decks. Sailors murmured old Valyrian charms against ice. When Dragonstone's beacon faded behind, Drogon roared, a sound that rolled across black water like distant thunder. On the 10th day, sails speckled the dawn horizon, Tyrell green lilies trimmed with wolves. Envoy ships sent by Robb to escort. At midday, Daenerys' flagship drew alongside a northern longship, commanded by Theon Greyjoy. The exile returned. He bowed awkwardly on the wet planks, offered a chest of dragonglass from Skagos mines. "For the dead," he said, "and for forgiveness." Daenerys took a single shard, turned it in light. Fire and ice make fragile allies. Betray either, and glass shatters. "Da." Theon swallowed. "I have shattered already. Today, I rebuild." That night, Daenerys and her council dined aboard, joined by Willis Tyrell's secretary and Sansa's raven emissary. A white bird dyed gray at wings. They mapped approach. Land at Driftmark, march through Crackclaw Point's thin forests, meet Robb at Harrenhal, where supplies pooled amid burnt towers. Dragons would patrol stretches to deter Lannister cavalry raids. The plan seemed mad, yet winter pressed them. As stars brightened, Daenerys stepped on deck alone. Drogon glided overhead. She whispered to him, "Soon we face what even fire may fear." A hiss like steam in deep caverns answered. Robb left King's Landing 2 mornings later. He rode north with a strike force of River Knights, Martell Scouts, and Karstark cavalry, his queen's guard, though he wore no crown wife. Sansa remained, sworn regent in all but name, with Jaime to advise and Brienne to guard. Catelyn traveled with the king, unwilling to let both sons stand alone under same sky of dread. They halted first at Maidenpool, shoring defenses, then pressed to the Trident where they found Tully banners repelling a Bolton raid. Roos's attempt to seize river crossings. The flayed man fled north. Robb did not follow. Time weighed heavier than vengeance. At Harrenhal's smoking husk, they met Daenerys. Snow fell through broken stone archways as the Wolf King and Dragon Queen faced each other for the first time. Robb dismounted, dropping to one knee in ash-laced snow. Daenerys inclined her head. "No crowns," she said softly. "No crowns," he echoed, rising. They clasped wrists. Heat bled through Daenerys' palm, heat of dragons sleeping restive beyond walls. Grey Wind and Drogon sized each other from afar, each predatory, each uncertain, That night they feasted in the ruins' shattered great hall, a long table of driftwood planks placed beneath a hole where moonlight spilled. Jon Snow arrived 2 days after, his host encamped among blasted trees. He strode into the hall, wearing a cloak of raven feathers and frost-rimmed hair. He and Daenerys locked eyes, a silent greeting of lost kin. Robb embraced him, and for a moment time bent backward to Winterfell's courtyard, where boys sparred in warm afternoon. Jon laid a bundle on the table. Shorn heads of white, frost-bitten things, eyes like blue candles extinguished. "Scouts 3 leagues south of the wall," he said. "They come." Silence answered. Then Daenerys spoke. "So do we." In the far north, under aurora curtains, the Night King raised an arm of cracked azure. Thousands of whites stirred. At his back towered giants of icebound bone. A scream of wind carried flakes the size of knives. He stared southward, where 3 plumes of dragonfire flickered faint across sky, signals of a world still alive. Within the black of his eyes, a direwolf, a dragon, a crowned stag, all wreathed in ghost light. He lowered his arm. The long march quickened. Back at King's Landing, the first famine riot ignited. A rumor: Tyrell grain ships sunk, Manderley salt pork spoiled, fanned into frenzy. Small folk stormed granaries. The city watch, thin, scattered. Cersei, from her window, watched flames gutter below and smiled. She donned a crimson mantle, spread her arms, and spoke to the crowd that gathered beneath after guards ushered her to the balcony. "You starve because the wolves hoard. Look to the Red Keep, you will find their feasts." She pointed east where freight wagons sat loaded for northern transport. "Take what is yours." Before Brienne could drag her inside, rocks flew. The mob surged up the hill. Brienne barred the doors. Jaime rallied veterans, but numbers lacked. They held until dusk when Tyrell Reserve cavalry arrived, trampling looters, restoring order with sorrow and broken bodies. The courtyard ran red. Sansa descended among the wounded, kneeling to bind a boy's leg even as his father cursed her name. Tears blurred her sight, but she did not flee. Cersei was confined to a tower cell. Jaime stood outside bars. "You preach peace, yet stoke blood," he accused. "I preach truth," she hissed. "The North will fail, then my father comes." Jaime's shoulders sagged. "Your father may never come, and if he does, winter may already have taken us all." Cersei's laugh echoed down stone. "Then the lions will feast in hell." Robb's army, now called the Dawn Host, marched through Last Hearth's valley behind interlocking walls of spear and flame. Daenerys dragons swept overhead, scorching clearings to funnel undead into kill lanes. In 2 moons they reached the fields south of the wall. Jones' rangers signaled. The dead stood a league beyond, silent as petrified forest. On the frozen river, Robb knelt to Grey Wind, pressing nose to muzzle. "Go," he whispered. The direwolf bounded north, disappearing into gloom. He rose, stared at ranks behind, unsullied shields rimmed with dragonglass, Karstark pikes glistening with obsidian, Martell Spardancers cloaked in orange flames of dawn. At center strode Bran Stark in a wooden chair borne by Hodor's kin, eyes white, gorging ravens that swirled overhead. Daenerys met Robb's gaze. She mounted Drogon. Jon climbed behind, twin riders astride living fire. Daenerys raised her arm, unsullied horns blared. A single melancholy note. The lines advanced. Snow muffled all sound. The dead emerged, pale tide beneath fractal sky. Giants shambled, wolves of ice, children still wearing tatters of laughter. The clash, when it came, forged a sound beyond description, steel singing, flesh shattering, dragonfire roaring, sorcery keening. Robb carved through whites like a scythe, every swing of sword echoing Ned's old lessons. Beside him Arya danced, a blur of needle and Valyrian dagger gifted by Brand. She leapt onto the back of an undead bear, plunged blade into crystalline eye, somersaulted clear. Drogon dove, bathed frontline in fire. Rhaegal and Viserion lanced overhead, spewing twin streams of molten light. Yet for every corpse immolated, 3 more rose. Daenerys banked, searching. There, the Night King. Atop an ice worm, eyes pits of blue damnation. She urged Drogon higher. Jon steadied behind. The 2 dragons met in sky. Flame against frost. Ice shattered, fire dimmed. Jon leapt, Longclaw flashing. Struck, but the Night King caught the blade in bare hand. Frost blooming along steel. Drogon roared agony, wings faltering. Below on ground, Bran raised both hands. Ravens screamed, diving. They exploded into flame midair, each turning to ash that drifted on invisible currents, then coiled around the Night King, like a cloak of embers. For the first time, blue eyes flickered uncertainty. Jon drove dragonglass into chest. Frost cracked, yet still the Night King endured, throwing Jon down onto ridge. It was Robb who ran, heart blazing, leaping onto the iceworm's tail, hacking until scaled segments split. Blood like liquid starlight gushed. The worm shrieked. The Night King slipped, 1 foot unmooring. At that moment, gray wind lunged from blindside, jaws clamping the Night King's leg. Ice splintered. Together direwolf and demon toppled from the sky, smashing into cracked river far below. Robb fell too, landing on hands and knees near Jon, ribs broken. The river cracked fully, swallowed king, wolf, and white. Silence crashed. Then, a ripple of blue light rippled outward like shattering glass. All whites jerked, stiffened. Their eyes faded to white. They dropped, unmoving. Snow fell again, but softer. Dawn bled pale gold across horizon, catching edges of broken ice. Jon crawled to the riverbank, calling Robb's name. Sansa's scream echoed from distant ridge. Daenerys circled Drogon overhead, keening. A shape broke surface, gray wind dragging something in jaws. Robb Stark coughed water, eyes wild, armor frozen to flesh. Jon waited, pulled him ashore. The Night King's corpse floated near, face shattered like quartz, veins of shadow seeping into current. Bran exhaled, pupils returning. Raven circled, free. Robb collapsed. Jon ripped off cuirass, pressed cloth to bleeding flank. Daenerys landed, knelt. Bran's chair rolled close, Hodor's kin silent. Catelyn reached her son, tears freezing on cheeks. Robb opened eyes. Is it done? Jon nodded. For now. A hush spread. Among host, torches guttered but did not extinguish. In the clearing cold, men and women of all banners stood beside piles of fallen undead, steam rising from bodies. They did not cheer, exhaustion claimed them, but relief simmered like coals awaiting breath. Far south, in King's Landing, the snow ceased. Sansa looked skyward and felt something release, as if a string pulled from her heart had gone slack. Bells, unsummoned, began to toll. She wondered who pulled them. Later she learned a child had wandered into the belfry and rung them solely because the day felt lighter. A week passed before healers deemed Robb fit to stand. Bran sat with him within the shell of an old weirwood hut beyond the wall, their council small. Jon Daenerys, Arya, Catelyn, Tyrion newly arrived from the Vale with aid. Theon bearing treaty scrolls from the islands. Missandei, Sam Tarly with maester dispatches. Robb bowed head. The dead fall, yet the living war remains. Cersei stirs rebellion. Tywin besieges Duskendale. Stannis bleeds. Roose prowls. We have dragons but dwindling supplies. And now, Daenerys touched Jon's hand. We give the realm a choice, heal or starve in conflict. I will kneel to no iron throne of swords, but I will stand beside a council of all realms. 7 seats, equal voice, 1 seat for the watch, 1 for the free folk, 1 for the maesters, and 1 for the people. Tyrion smiled. A radical notion. But coins minted with wolves buy bread. Dragons melt chains. Jon rose. The watch seat cannot be mine if I serve both. I resign, Lord Commander. The watch chooses anew. Bran's eyes turned white for heartbeat, then returned. They choose Tormund Giantsbane. Jon blinked, then grinned. Robb met Daenerys' gaze. I step back from Iron Throne. I will be Warden of the North. My sister Sansa shall represent King's Landing until elections decide. The realm shall vote by houses and by freefolk muster. Let the iron chair melt and forge plowshares. They clasped wrists. A new dawn crept through cracks in hut roof, illuminating dragonglass fragments glowing dull red in hearth. Outside, white ravens flew, messengers of spring's first whisper. In Casterly Rock, Tywin Lannister received news in shards. The dead fallen, Stannis encamped, Cersei imprisoned, Robb alive. He sat long in silence. Bolton's blade flickered in corner shadows. Tywin finally spoke. We negotiate. Roose smiled thinly. There is always one more skin to peel. On the wall, newly elected Lord Commander Tormund roared laughter at his black cloak, trimmed now in hair fur. Big Bear took seat. Small Bear keeps him warm. He ordered gates widened to welcome farms under wildling hands. Snow melted in patches along southern slope, revealing shoots of green. Robb returned to King's Landing one last time mid-spring. Streets bloomed with crocus pushing through cracks. People lined Flea Bottom to watch him ride. No crown, but the iron circlet now etched with dragon and wolf entwined. He paused beside a baker's stall, bought a loaf, tore it, gave half to the vendor, half to a barefoot girl. She giggled. In the throne room, the iron chair awaited melting. Daenerys' dragons poised above courtyard forge. Robb ran fingers along a twisted blade. Many died for this, he murmured. He stepped back. Drogon exhaled. Flames engulfed iron, red to white to liquid. When heat dimmed, only a pool of glowing metal remained. From it, master smiths forged 7 small daggers, one for each council seat, symbolic blades to remind leaders that power cuts 2 ways. The first council gathered days later under a white canvas in the courtyard, no walls to hide the sky. Sansa took notes. Arya guarded perimeter. Jaime stood behind Cersei's vacant chair. She refused attendance. Tyrion opened with jest. Welcome to the messy art of better endings. They argued tariffs, rebuilds, fief boundaries. None drew steel. That night, Robb walked the Godswood Garden, where a single northern weirwood transplanted by Jon's men flourished, leaves crimson against budding fig branches. Sansa joined, slipping her arm through his. Do you think it will hold? She asked. It must. He exhaled. Peace is winter wheat. It sprouts fragile, but every sunrise strengthens. She smiled. Then we keep watch. In the distance, across rooftops touched gold by lanterns, children raced kites shaped like direwolves and dragons, strings tangling overhead. Somewhere a bard strummed a new tune, lyrics rising. Of a night conquered by wolves, of a queen of fire who knelt to no crown, of bellies filled and swords sheathed. Robb closed his eyes, and in that breath, he felt Winterfell's summer again. The smell of pine, the echo of Bran's laughter, the distant howl of a direwolf welcoming dawn. He opened them onto a city reborn and whispered, "The North remembers." The words drifted upward, caught in the still cold air, and carried beyond walls toward fields where green spears pushed through melting snow. First promises of a realm learning, at last, to grow. Now. The small council's canvas pavilion, soon christened the hall without walls, rose white and irregular against the pale spring sky, its linen panels luffing in the breeze like the sails of a ship moored on dry land. Soft birdsong tangled with the distant thud of hammers from half-finished granaries as Robb Stark crossed the ward. A murmur of voices drifted through the open flap, Dorne's lilting vowels, the careful consonants of the citadel, the florid reach drawl that even hunger could not thin. He paused a moment at the threshold, feeling life in his chest pulse faster at the thought that for the first time in living memory every sworn land of the 7 kingdoms, and 2 once scorned beyond, convened to govern without swords unsheathed. Ghosts of battlefield trumpets still rang in distant corners of his mind, but this, he told himself, was the harder courage: to enter a room unarmed. Inside, 7 chairs of mismatched make formed a circle around a round ashwood table. The chairs had been collected from ruins, workshops, and caravan bundles. A tall, straight-back oaken seat from Winterfell's broken nursery. A wide, low bench carved with sunspears, dusted orange by the red sands of Sunspear. A high stool of polished black rock, quarried at Dragonstone centuries before Aegon. Each bore a single dragon-glass dagger sheathed at the right arm, symbols of duty, not menace. Daenerys occupied the Dragonstone chair, silver hair bound in a braided coronet. Jon Snow leaned forward on Winterfell's, gloved hands wrapped round the hilt of his council dagger, as though drawing steady breath through the obsidian. Willis Tyrell, his ruined leg resting on a stool, balanced a ledger across his knees. Prince Arianne Martell lifted a flagon of lemon water to her lips. Maester Samwell Tarly wiped quill ink from his thumb and nodded for Robb to join. "One seat remains," Robb said, glancing at the empty black basalt chair carved with swirling waves. "The Iron Islands token, recently added. Has Lady Asha not arrived?" Asha Greyjoy appeared behind him with the breeze, smelling of salt and hemp rope. She dropped into the chair without ceremony, propped her boots on a crossbar, and tipped him a mocking half-salute. "Wind's contrary, but loot never travels so quick as a kraken with cause." Sam turned a page. "We stand at quorum." He dipped the quill. "Order of business. Harvest forecasts, Northern Reconstruction. Tywin Lannister's overtures. Cersei Lannister's disposition. The Faith's petition for reconstruction funds, and supply routes to Old Town for dragonglass armaments. 12 items of grievance. 4 proposals of trade." Robb wondered whether any king of old could have dreamt a council list so mundane and so perilous. He folded arms on the table. "Begin with grain." Willis flicked a parchment. Early spring plantings in the Reach were half of traditional yield due to conscription losses and last year's field fires. The Mander Valley can supply 90,000 bushels if irrigation ditches are cleared by midsummer. House Rowan pledges labor if House Tarly returns their prisoners. He eyed Jon and Daenerys, then Robb again. "The trick is moving seed and oxen north without inviting bowshot from raiders still loyal to the Rock." Asha tapped knuckles on her sheathed dagger. "Kraken sails guard the Mander from Fair Isle to Shield Islands. Lannister longships will not slip by our nets, but will want timbers and smith's nails when the job is done. Castamir's forges glowed red last I saw them." "Bendo." Prince Arianne tilted a brow. "Quid pro quo, my salt-soaked friend. Quench fires in the Red Mountains, and Dorne will trade cedar and ironwood by sea. You'll have masts enough for 1,000 years." "Done," Asha said, grinning. They turned to Jon. He described the Watch's rebuilt garrisons, wildlings tilling new fields in the Gift, giant clans helping fell burnt forests for palisades. When he spoke of Tormund Giantsbane, leading the rebuilding of Eastwatch with Iron Islands carpenters, even Asha's sardonic eyes softened. Yet weight lingered in his voice. "Dragonglass stores run thin. We shape dagger and arrow faster than miners chip new veins. We must seek old caches beneath Dragonstone and beyond the stepping stones." Daenerys inclined her head. "Drogon's flame can open vents no pickaxe dare, but each flight taxes him and drains our feed. Grain for dragons weighs heavier than grain for men." Willis scribbled. 200 bushels per moon, per dragon. We can spare half that. Then, glancing at Sam, "Perhaps see if forged steel can best shadowglass by mixing it. Valyrian experiments might stretch supply." Sam's cheeks pinked. The Citadel's alchemists stand ready, though they still squabble over how Valyrian forging bound spellwork to steel. "I can replicate little, but we are close to alloying regular iron with powdered dragonglass. The result shatters after one strike but pierces white bone like butter." Robb took the floor next. "Tywin Lannister sues for truce. His letter offers grain from the Golden Tooth stores, 100,000 gold dragons reparations, and Bolton's head on a spike for passage back into the king's peace. In exchange, he demands Cersei's release without trial and restoration of all Lannister lands, free of tithe. Then? Asha guffawed. Demands? In his boots, I'd beg. Prince Arianne stroked her lower lip. Gold still turns wheels. But freeing Cersei sets wildfire in a hound's kennel. She's already stirred a riot under guard. Daenerys' eyes gleamed like molten coin. I would not see another queen shackled in a cell. Yet liberty without leash risks the realm. Perhaps a middle path. Exile beyond Westeros. Escorted to Lys. Forbidden return. Men shout. Willis frowned. Tywin will claim insult. Then he learns what insult tastes like when the crop fails, Robb replied. Still, if we hold Cersei, Tywin prolongs war. The realm bleeds. We bargain. He drummed fingers. Offer. Cersei released to the Faith's custody for penance at the Great Sept once rebuilt. Tywin swears fealty, pays grain tithe, accepts council oversight of western mines. A host of Lannister children fostered as wards. Loyalty and peace bound in blood. Then, a hush fell. Even Asha sat upright. Jon spoke quietly. Hostage trade is an old blade. It cuts prisoner and jailer alike. Robb nodded. Then we sheathe it, honest. The children will live as honored guests under Maester care, free to roam, taught history of all kingdoms. No chains. His gaze swept them. 10 years of open trust begins with one bold step. Daenerys' lips curved. I will sign this accord. Arianne and Willis inclined heads. Asha offered a curt nod. Sam scratched the parchment. Next. Sam sighed. The Faith's petition. It took another hour to divide half-crumbled sept stones between rival high septon claimants and approve coin for soup kitchens. When the session ended, the dragonglass daggers were sheathed untouched. No voice had been raised in threat. Robb exhaled as though he had ridden a league at gallop. After, as the council dispersed into morning sunlight, Daenerys fell into step beside him down the half-repaired winding stair toward the inner garden. Poppies the color of freshly spilt wine nodded in the breeze. Someone, Sansa perhaps, had coaxed every bare patch of soil into bloom. You speak with your father's sternness, Daenerys said. But there is Catelyn's warmth beneath. Robb smiled ruefully. And beneath that, fear. He plucked a poppy, twirled the stem. What if Tywin accepts only to strike after we lower our guard? Then we answer stronger. Fear withheld is fear doubled. She glanced sidelong. You have stood beside dragons in winter's death. Do not quake at lions. Now. They walked in companionable quiet until Bran's ravens burst overhead. Scattering petals. A single raven fluttered down, landing on Daenerys' wrist. Its tiny leg bore a message tube bound with a red thread, the seal of Melisandre of Asshai. Robb slid the parchment out. Stannis prepares to march from Duskendale. He requests council presence for parley with Tywin, and Melisandre claims to have seen a shadow in her fires, a man of flayed skin poisoning Dawn. Daenerys frowned. Bolton, or some new ghost, Robb said. His stomach sank. Either way, we ride to Duskendale within the fortnight. 2 days later, a hush swept through the streets of King's Landing. A hush that felt like the moment before a bowstring snaps. Sansa Stark sensed it first while moving through the market square with Brienne. Stallholders spoke in clipped voices, looking past her shoulder. Pigeons fluttered in sudden start without hawks above. Only once before had she felt such a tremor in the city's breath. The morning Joffrey ordered her father's head. At mid-morning, bells tolled. 3 slow peals. Not the watchtower, but the Queen's Sept ruin, where no bell should hang. Brienne drew steel. Sansa quickened pace toward the sound. At the broken doors, a single figure knelt amid rubble. Cersei Lannister. She wore shabby gray penitence linen. Around her neck hung an iron link of the maester's chain, heavy enough to bruise. And above her, lashed to a makeshift belfry beam, dangled the corpse of Grand Maester Garades. Tongue swollen purple, eyes like boiled eggs, a parchment pinned to his breast with a hairpin tipped in wildfire glass. The Faith cannot bind lions, The North has no right to crown. Brienne raised shield as City Watch poured in behind. Cersei rose slowly, chains clinking, eyes gleaming with triumph even in rags. "A gift," she announced. "The false healers gave me poison. I returned it." Sansa's voice wavered but did not break. "You will be confined again." Cersei smiled, lips bloody where she had bitten them. "Confine me or kill me, little dove. Either way the realm will howl." It took 6 guards to drag her off. Brienne cleared the square. Sansa stood beneath the hung maester, fingers numb. She felt no tears, only the frigid certainty that Cersei had twisted one more knife into the fragile skin of peace. She wrote to Robb that night by guttering candle. "Cersei murderous again. Maester dead. Faith outraged. Keep heart strong. I fear more knives yet unsheathed." Duskendale sprawled beneath low gray skies, its harbor crammed with battered pine log rafts repurposed as floating barricades. When Robb's entourage arrived, wolves and dragons painted on their sails. The townsfolk watched from behind shuttered windows. Tywin's scarlet tents lined the northern ridge like gashes in the hillside. Stannis' camp lay west, colors crimson and black. Between them stretched an empty valley scoured bare by spring frost. In its center, a single pavilion stood, pitched on truce ground, banners of neutral brown. Robb entered the pavilion flanked by Jon, Daenerys, Prince Arianne, and Theon Greyjoy, bearing the Dawn host's standard. Across a trestle table covered by a plain white cloth sat Tywin Lannister in polished breastplate, Roose Bolton at his shoulder, and Melisandre in red robes bright as coals. Stannis paced behind them, jaw set tight. Silence reigned. Melisandre's red eyes flicked over Daenerys, then fixed on Jon too. "Azor Ahai come again," she murmured. "The prince that was promised stands shadowed by a doomed wolf." Jon had no time to reply before Stannis growled. "Speak plain, woman." She smiled. "Plain words burn slow. Listen instead to flame." Tywin folded gloved hands. "We come for treaty. Your conditions circulated. I propose modifications." He unfurled a scroll. "The West retains mining rights, lays yearly tribute equal to 10% yield. The faith may keep my daughter for atonement, but no child of Lannister blood shall be fostered against my will. And Bolton's head I bring you now." He gestured. Bolton stepped forward, hands bound behind. Tywin's guards forced him to his knees. His pale eyes seemed almost amused. A lion spares his true coalition. Tywin ripped the flayed man's sigil from Bolton's cloak. House Bolton broke oaths, slaughtered prisoners. For that, the rock denies them shield. He drew a dagger to cut the bindings himself. Symbol of personal judgment. But as metal touched rope, Bolton jerked free. Too quick. He had never been tied. He spun, slashing a hidden wristblade across Tywin's midriff. Gold steel links parted, blood spurted. Chaos erupted. Stannis drew sword, Jon too. Bolton hurled a vial, wildfire, toward Daenerys. Drogon shrieked outside the pavilion. Daenerys leapt, robe trailing, as green flame licked linen supports. Melisandre intoned a prayer that curdled like smoke. Robb tackled Roose, driving him into the table. Obsidian Council dagger punched beneath the flayed man's sigil, up through ribs. Bolton's eyes widened, breath wet. He whispered, "I wanted a kingdom of fear." Robb twisted, felt life leave. Bolton sagged, dead. Flames raced across canvas. Jon dragged Tywin clear, pressing cloth to the elder lion's wound. Willis Tyrell's guards burst in, dousing wildfire with sand. Stannis pinned Melisandre with a glare. "Your visions promised victory," he spat. She replied, "Victory demands sacrifice. The lion's blood must feed the dawn." She reached for a flint hidden in her sleeve, but Arianne's dagger flashed. The flint flew. Theon's boot stamped it. Outside, smoke billowed into gray sky. Drogon landed, wings fanning cinders. Daenerys shouted Valyrian, he hissed, scorching stray embers. Tywin, pale, struggled to stand. Jon held him steady. "Your life owes the wolf," Jon said. Tywin's stern mouth tightened. Blood seeped through fingers. Debts will be tallied later. That night in Tywin's healer tent, Robb faced the most dangerous man in Westeros, bound to a pallet by stitches. "I kept my part," Robb said. "Bolton dead. Lannister free. Our treaty stands." Tywin's voice rasped. "Your sister unleashes mobs in the capital." Robb stiffened. "She murdered the Grand Maester." "Then let the faith judge her," Tywin said, eyes hard. "But know this, slaying me would have broken realms. So would fostering my kin by force. You are wiser now." He coughed. "I yield. Western mines pay tribute. Grain flows." He closed his eyes. "See my grandchildren safe, and I will die content." Robb bowed, ignoring the twist of pity. Next dawn banners of truce fluttered, the lion and wolf bound by knotted cord stained in Bolton blood. Stannis watched grimly as healers bore Tywin to a litter bound for the rock. Melisandre vanished in night. Cersei's trial opened in the rebuilt sept of the Mother, still roofless but hung with silk awnings. Sansa stood as Queen's voice for prosecution, Jaime for defense. High Septon Theodorus presided, flanked by 7 masked faith militant. 1,000 citizens filled the square. Snowmelt ran in gutters, smelling of wet stone and hope. Cersei entered wearing penitent gray. She stared at Sansa with a smile of knives. Charges read: murder of Grand Maester Gerardes, incitement of riot, treason against crown. Jaime argued that prison despair had driven her to madness, that leniency best healed wounds. Sansa recounted names of children trampled, bakers beaten, watchmen gutted. When her voice quavered, Arya's gaze steadied her from crowd. The Septon conferred with Septon's circle. They returned with verdict: penance walk from Great Sept to Maiden's Fountain, followed by cloistered life in Mother House for 5 years. If Lannister gold funded orphan hostels, sentence might be halved. Cersei accepted with mocking curtsy. "I shall atone." She shot Sansa a look. "May your wolves keep their leash." The naked walk commenced at dusk. Unlike her first humiliation under the High Sparrow, this procession held no jeering mob. Sansa forbade mockery. City Watch cleared path, Brienne strode between. Yet along the route, silent eyes of small folk weighed sin and sorrow. Cersei walked head high until wind gusted and winter's chill clawed. She shivered then, and tears streaked her cheeks, and though no one shouted shame, the words seemed etched in every wall. At Fountain's Rim, Sansa offered a wool cloak. Cersei refused, stepping into icy water, knees buckling. Only then did she reach for the cloak, not Sansa's hand. Brienne escorted her to the Mother House gate. Sansa watched the doors close with mix of relief and foreboding. Lions caged sometimes growl until walls fall. In the Vale's airy chambers, Tyrion Lannister sipped mountain tea beside Lord Robert Arryn, now taller and broader, still pale. Tyrion unfolded maps of grain routes and mountain path fortifications. "The realm needs your roads," he told the boy. "Your people need the realm's markets, lower tolls, raise taverns, gold will pour." Robert looked unsure. But his mother's ghost was gone, and the winds outside sang promise. "You truly think me capable?" he whispered. "More than capable," Tyrion said. "If the smallest Lannister can steer a Dragon Queen's council, the Falcon can rule his nest." Robert smiled crookedly. The first stone of a new Eastern alliance settled into place. Northern summer crept in fits and starts. Fields along the Trident sprouted barley. Dornish caravans hauled citrus north. The Reach Sweet sang against scythes. In King's Landing, children played among half-finished statues of direwolves and dragons, perched atop the Red Keep's outer stair, works of masons blending old iconography into new. Gray wind patrolled ramparts at dusk. Ghost slunk ghost-like among alleyways. The city slept warm and mostly fed. Smiths forged obsidian steel alloy spearheads, brittle but deadly. Sam's alchemists shaped candle-thick dragonglass rods for maester torches. Yet news of Melisandre's disappearance stalked conversation like a shadow cat. Reports placed her in the Stormlands, whispering of a newborn savior. Others claimed she sought Euron's Black Fleet, horns of dragon binding. Robb ordered quiet searches, but refused to hunt vengeance across 1,000 miles. "Let ghosts chase ghosts," he told Daenerys. "We guard the living." Summer's second moon saw Daenerys fly north to oversee Dragonstone mines, leaving Rhaegal to guard the capital. She kissed Robb's cheek before takeoff. "Rule soft," she murmured. He touched where lips brushed, imagining how Targaryen fire and Stark frost might one day merge in something beyond treaty. But he let the thought drift away. The realm consumed all personal wants for now. At Lady Stoneheart's old hide camp, now orphan refuge, Arya trained a dozen youths in swordplay. Her pupils mirrored her fluid fury, striking straw dummies until sweat-soaked rags. One dusk Jon visited, showing them how to pivot weight for two-handed blades. Arya watched pride swell in her chest. "Do you ever miss the road?" Jon asked when children slept. Arya gazed at sunset haze. "The road never leaves. It twists inside me. But I have a place to rest boots now." She nudged Jon's shoulder. "When all this council flame cools, maybe I'll sail west. See if maps end." Jon smiled, eyes sad. "Send a raven if you find another wall." In Casterly Rock's gold-flecked crypt, Tywin recovered, sitting at a table strewn with ledgers. A letter lay foremost. Wardenship of the West confirmed by council. Trade tithes due. Hostages to be delivered. 2 of his younger grandsons to be pages at Oldtown. 1 granddaughter to apprentice healer in Dorne. He pressed fingers to stitched scar along ribs, thinking not of pride lost, but of bloodline's future. He summoned Kevin. "Pack their trunks," he ordered. "Teach them courtesy. No bows lest they need them, but sharpen wit." Kevin hesitated. "You yield them willingly?" "I spend coin to earn profit, brother. So too with kin. They will learn worlds beyond Lion's Den." His gaze turned distant. "And perhaps they'll forgive old sins." A full year passed from the night Robb took King's Landing. Summer lingered warm. Grain barns brimmed. The hall without walls convened monthly now, in a lime-washed rotunda crowned by woven willow lattice. 7 chairs still mismatched, but cushions new, and each dagger sheathed beneath engraved motto. "Truth above swords." On the anniversary, Sansa commissioned a celebration. Lanterns shaped like direwolves and dragons floated along Blackwater Rush. Bards sang of Dawnhost. Children staged a play where a white wolf and scarlet dragon danced to scare away an ice giant. Robb watched from balcony, flanked by Bran, now standing a little, with device of jointed wood and gears built by Sam's tinkers. While below, the city roared with unburdened joy. Stars pricked sky. Daenerys returned, descending on Drogon through lantern haze, scattering sparks. She joined Robb at balustrade. Music drifted. She took his hand. "What next?" she asked. He looked at clasped fingers. "We hold what we've won. And if wind shifts, then we lean together." She smiled. Far below, river lanterns bobbed like constellations, each flame a story. Wind carried the faintest howl of a direwolf from distant fields, answered by a dragon's low rumble. Robb tipped his head back, watching smoke of pyres drift upward. The last funeral pyres for those lost in winter, now lit more for remembrance than necessity. As the smoke curled higher, it caught lantern light, glistened rainbow, and faded into night. He spoke quietly, the words lost beneath cheers. "Winter ended because we chose to stand." Daenerys squeezed his hand. Lanterns winked out one by one, but still their glow lingered behind eyelids, warm, persistent, unafraid. And so the realm breathed, not in triumph or surrender, but in the measured rhythm of hearts that had outlived ice and fire, and found, amidst ashes and thaw, the fragile promise of tomorrow. The heat of a Westerosi summer gathered slowly in the bones of the realm, thickening the air above the Blackwater, and making sweat bead on stone as though the city itself perspired. Cicadas droned in the acacia hedges lining the reconstructed King's Road, their unending buzz the anthem of afternoons too sultry for hammer or quill. But the peace fashioned by wolves and dragons refused to laze beneath the sun. It breathed in every splinter hammered into rebuilt carts, and in each nervous glance over shoulders, where memory still pictured wights or lions. In the fullness of peace, the kingdom discovered diligence. Robb Stark left the capital as warm winds blew north, taking only gray wind, a dozen iron wolves, and 2 scribes whose satchels brimmed with more parchment than blades. He rode not for war, but for audit, a monarch counting the pulse of the land he had stitched together from wreckage. His first stop lay atop the cars of the Westerlands, where the Rock's lesser lords plowed lonely ridges now cut free from Lannister tithe under the new tariff code. Hemp shoots bowed like supplicants when the Wolf King cantered into Falwell, yet the small folk straightened to full height when he dismounted, for he wore no steel, only a linen tunic damp at the collar. He scaled haylofts, sniffed oat bins, questioned midwives about salt rations, and sat at dusk with brewers, charting barley tooth and husk. At each village he scratched notes on a leather ledger and bade his scribes tally deliveries with promises kept. The lesson trickled south on gossip by peddlers. Kings could be tallied against grain as easily as coin. Gray Wind, grown grier about the muzzle, padded beside barley wagons and never snarled unless a lordling's hound bared teeth first. One night, on a granite spur, overlooking a field of flax, the direwolf pricked ears, hackles lifting. Robb followed the gaze. A shape slouched against a boundary post, man-sized, hooded, the cloak patterned in spiraling flay marks. Robb strode forward, hand on dagger, but the figure melted into corn rows, leaving only trampled stalks and a scrap of lamb's wool rope knotted in the Bolton manner. The next dawn, 3 shepherd children reported a stranger probing their father's smokehouse. Robb's party combed ridge and dale for a fortnight, found nothing but rumors. Yet in the ledger he inked a private note. Flayed shadow roams still. South of the arbor, the sun baked the deck of the Ningle as it ghosted through shoals of sargassum toward the stepstones. Daenerys watched the sea whiten under Drogon's absent shadow, and felt another shadow of her own, one of memory, not flesh, stretch against her spine. She had not sailed these waters since exile in her brother's shivering arms, when Westeros was only a vengeful mantra. Now she sailed homeward again, but on a voyage of resource, not conquest, to claim the ancient quarry of dragonglass rumored at the drowned ruins of Valyria's furthest waymarker, Tol Dares. Legend said the early Valyrians had packed its caverns with glassy shards black as forgotten nights, abandoning them when richer volcanoes bloomed in the east. The Dawn Host's miners begged a chance to test the tale. She gave it. Missandei leaned at the rail, a scarf shielding her braids from salt. Captain says a storm hovers beyond the horizon. Storms always hover, Daenerys murmured. Ace do ghosts. She thought of Melisandre. Moon after moon the Red Woman remained at large. Osprey riders along every coast whispered sightings. The Red Priestess on a dock in Storm's End, kneeling to kiss a newborn's brow. The Red Priestess preaching to gullible sellswords in Myr. The Red Priestess upon a black longship, fingers twined in amber beads. None confirmed, all feared. Joan's letters said little. Save shadows hide in every light. Be wary. Night fell. Seamless and humid. The Ningle dropped anchor in a lagoon aglow with plankton. Sailors swore at witchlight. Daenerys saw only nature's marvel. The air smelled of brimstone, proof the isle's veins still bled heat. She dreamed that night, a field of dragonglass roses, petals sharp as razors, blooming beneath a bleeding moon. When dawn tinted sky with peach, she and her hand-picked miners rowed to shore. They found the cavern after 3 hours of hacking through vines. The entrance side cool and damp, exhaling a smell of wet stone mingled with faint sulfur. Lanterns showed strata of obsidian glimmering like frozen pitch. Picks rang. Shards spalled. As the first crates filled, Drogon rumbled deep in the gorge, agitated by the echoing chisel clacks. Daenerys soothed him with whispers. By noon, 100-weight bricks of fresh dragonglass lay stacked like onyx ingots. Missandei returned from scouting the southern point with uneasy news. Masts on horizon, dark and many. Longships. Kraken banners. Tight. Asha would signal, Daenerys replied. Missandei shook her head. Sails too ragged. Hulls crude. Not her build. Euron Greyjoy's legend slithered from tavern to tavern, a captain who wielded a horn that bound leviathans, who consorted with shadowbinders, who carved himself a throne of shark jawbones. Robb's envoy once found a corpse near Old Wick, flayed, sigil of Bolton stamped to chest, tongue removed. Bolton's shade and Kraken's greed were courting something fouler. Daenerys ordered immediate embarkation. Crates clanged down gangways as the Ningle's crew loosed sails. Before tide turned, 6 longships emerged from haze, sails the color of rotting kelp. One bore masts topped by severed heads, tarred to preserve sneers. At the prow, a damp horn of mottled bone hung from chains. Dragonbinder, whispered the crew. Asha's spies had described it. A hateful thing said to kill those who blew it, yet enslave dragon souls all the same. Daenerys stood at the pooptail, wind blowing silver hair across her cheeks. She raised one arm. Drogon shrieked overhead, flames thonging water to steam. The Kraken line faltered, except the lead ship, whose deck brandished a red-robed figure. Melisandre. Her hands clasped the horn. Asha's warning rang in Daenerys' head. When priests of our lore hunt worms, they burn anything that moves. Melisandre lifted the horn. 3 beats rolled across the water, bass notes that vibrated hull planks and rattled teeth. Drogon's wings stuttered mid-flap. His roar faltered into a strangled hiss. Pain lanced through Daenerys' temples like red-hot needles. The dragon wheeled in circles, smoke sputtering from nostrils. Daenerys screamed a command, "Drogon, fly!" But sound splintered beneath the horn's resonance. Missandei dragged her from the rail as an obsidian shard toppled across deck, sheared from a crate by the vibration. The Ningle heaved, taking a swarm of arrows along her starboard. Crew loosed return volleys. Firepots streaked. But the threat was the horn. Daenerys shoved through chaos, seized a fresh shard from the crate, and bit into her own thumb. Blood welled. She smeared it down the shard's edge. Old Valyrian lines rose in her mind like chant. Blood of the dragon binds. She hurled the shard into the sea between Drogon and the horn's ship. Salt hissed against molten stone, for the shard glowed suddenly white, superheated by some power not hers alone, but ancient and slumbering in both glass and blood. Steam erupted. A curtain. The horn's next blast stumbled, warbling off key. Drogon reared above the veil, eyes clearing. He opened jaws and vomited a jet of flame so pure it cut the haze like a brand new dawn. Fire slammed into the lead ship. Tarred heads ignited like lanterns. Melisandre vanished amid tongues of green and red flame. Whether burned or leapt into sea's shadow, none could say. The longships scattered. Drogon circled once, then landed on the Ningle's foredeck, great claws gouging planks. He lowered his head against Daenerys' chest. She stroked scalding scales until his tremors eased. But inside her, a tremor grew. If the Red Woman had allied with Euron, horns would sound again. They sailed at once. Crates of dragonglass shifted with roll. Shards clicked like teeth chattering. That night Daenerys called a council on deck. Miners, Missandei, Tyrion. Arrived by fast cutter to deliver grain charts. And Theon, gaunt from weeks hounding Euron's sails. Theon's face stiffened at Melisandre's mention. I raided her camp at Storm's End. She left 3 days before, muttering about a prince who wastes his light. She sailed east and south. Your isle fits her map. Bah. Tyrion sipped watered wine. She failed to seize your dragon, but horns blown twice often sound a third. He poked the black shard now cold on deck. If this trick of blood and glass saved us, we must replicate it. And soon, Daenerys said. Sail to King's Landing with every shard we have. I will not let horns bind what must fly free. In the Reach, Willis Tyrell found himself besieged, not by warlords, but by mathematicians. The Citadel's arithmeticians descended on Highgarden with ledgers fat as winter geese, eager to quantify yield against tribute. Willis amused himself by limping across pavilions quoting columns of bushel ratios until the scholars fled. He then met with Princess Ariane Martell under a cedar awning strung with lemon-colored silks, solar glare too cruel for her desert-bred eyes. They spoke of trade caravans, Dorne's citrus groves, and the quiet power of feeding bellies to tame insurgents. But late in the evening, Ariana's words drifted to the north. To Jon Snow. He mends walls with wildlings and giants, yet the watch seat weighs on him like ice mail, she said, her fingers tracing stem of a lily. Men who conquer death seldom grasp how to enjoy harvest. Willis tapped cane on flagging. Then he must harvest slowly. I too learned patience when my leg broke and I could only watch tourneys. Growth hides in stillness. He slid a sealed scroll across table. Jon writes that crows sight pale shapes beyond Skagos. The dead stir again, smaller bands. Perhaps lost remnants. He asks for braided cheeses to bolster the new garrisons. And this. Willis unrolled a slip of parchment. A charcoal sketch of a boy's face frozen in rictus, eyes like shattered ice. A child white, caught scouting the gift. Ariane inhaled sharply. If the Night King fell, why rise again? Rot left in darkness still festers, Willis said. We prune, we burn, then we plant anew. But the soil remembers. He sealed cheese orders and penned to Robb. Old ghosts stir north. Watch the dark. Robb reached Winterfell the day white heather bloomed along the shattered outer walls. Ravens shrieked welcome. Bran waited in the godswood, leaning on a carved weirwood staff Hodor's kin had whittled. Snowmelt bubbled in the nearby pools. You ride like father, Bran said when Robb dismounted. Because I carry the same worries, Robb answered, gripping his brother's forearms. Bran's gaze clouded, a milky film sliding over pupils. He described a dream. A scarlet woman walked a beach of black glass. Her footprints smoked. Behind her followed a kraken with eyes of green fire and a lion with ribs of gold. They sought the heart of a dire wolf sleeping beneath broken stones. I flew above and dropped ice into her footprints. They hissed but did not die. Robb exhaled. Drogon burnt her horn, but not her spirit. There is more, Bran murmured. Ace of many faces waits in the dark between tides. He wears a mask of skin sewn from laughter. He is neither Bolton nor Greyjoy, but all knives together. Tears slipped from Bran's sightless eyes. He wants Song of Wolves to end. Robb clasped his brother's cold hands. Songs can be rewritten. That night, he sat beneath the restored Great Hall rafters, drafting letters. To Jon, to Daenerys, to Willis. He outlined Bran's vision and requested watchers on every sea rock. While ink dried, snow flurried outside. Summer's whimsy rather than winter's threat. And Robb wondered whether the realm could bear one more summoning of courage. In King's Landing, Sansa met Daenerys' fleet at dawn, standing on the freshly cobbled quay as sailors unloaded dragonglass crates by pulley. Rhaegal perched on the rampart above the Gate of the Gods, eyes tracking each crate as though counting. When Daenerys stepped down the gangplank, Sansa embraced her with sudden fierceness. I have nightmare tidings, Sansa whispered. Cersei plots even in prayer. She has written her father since the trial. Pigeons smuggled from novices' nests. Maester Vyman intercepted one. She asks Tywin to free her during a pilgrimage to Lannisport. Mendawanchi. The lion's chain rattles still, Daenerys said. But we hold the key. She nodded toward crates. With these, Winterfell's forges will never sleep. A scream tore the air. Both women whirled. Atop the rampart, Rhaegal reared, wings mantling. An arrow jutted from his neck. Small, but tipped in green crystal. Poison. The street erupted in panic. Archers scanned rooftops. Brienne sprinted across battlements. A second shaft clipped Rhaegal's shoulder. This one smoked with pale vapor. Rhaegal's roar shook the quay. He flung himself skyward, wings beating air into a hurricane, then vanished toward the river, blood dotting clouds. Sansa's heart hammered. Her first thought leapt to Cersei. Second, to the faceless men. She shoved through bodies to where archers found the fallen arrow. Shaft blackened as though charred. Fletching dyed in Bolton colors. Yet the heading bore no smith mark known. Its crystal glowed faintly, a conjurer's bauble, more alchemical than metallurgic. Brienne shoved through. The shot came from the bell tower of the College of Rhetors. We found a dead watchman, throat slit, no bow. Sansa turned to Daenerys. Grief warred with fury in the queen's violet eyes. "Find him," Daenerys whispered, voice thinner than winter ice. "I wish dragons could smell faces through masks." She gripped Sansa's hand. "Tell Robb I bring war to whoever wields that arrow." Rhaegal did not return by dusk. Teams scoured riverbanks, found streaks of blood on reeds. Nothing more. Daenerys moved through the keep like a spirit unmoored. Silent, save for brief, sharp commands to the war council. Triple guard on Drogon's Eyrie. Fetch Myrish alchemists to test arrow residue. Press every bird to track Melisandre. Jaime sought her out to counsel calm. She dismissed him with a glance so flat he fell silent. That night, Sansa trudged the ramparts, cloak snapping. Gray wind lay against her boots. Chin on paws, eyes narrowed to slits. He lifted his head once, sniffed the air, then growled, not the bark of alarm but a rumble of unease. Sansa followed his gaze. Beyond the river, an orange glow flickered low, as though some unseen forge roared in the marsh. For an instant, the glow flared brighter, then vanished. Sansa clutched railing. Fire in wet ground, in the hour before midnight. Wildfire, perhaps, or signal. She palmed a torch and hurried to the lower gate, sending Brienne to alert Daenerys. Patrols rode within the hour, but found only charred reeds and bootprints leading nowhere. At dawn, Rhaegal returned. He came from the northern sky, gliding like a rent cloud. His wing beats were labored, blood-mottled emerald scales. He alighted on the Red Keep's highest turret and collapsed, neck curling around battlements. Maesters swarmed. Daenerys climbed the tower despite protests, sat beside the great head, stroked his frills. The green dragon's breath rattled like wind through broken shutters. Maester Ebrose drew the crystal-tipped arrow from the wound. Vapor hissed. He sniffed. Manticore venom fused with wildfire salts, a concoction meant to burn inside blood. He tipped a vial of milk of the poppy. "I can purge some with Illyrian root, but I cannot promise flight again." Daenerys whispered to the dragon in High Valyrian. Rhaegal's eye, a molten gold disk, slid toward her. She pressed her brow to his snout until her skin seared. When she rose, her face bore a flake of peeling burn, but her voice rang clear. "He will heal." She turned to Sansa. "But I will not sit idle." Sansa nodded. "Robb will ride south at once. Jon too, if we ask." "We shall not ask," Daenerys replied, a note like steel and water. "We summon." On a headland north of Fair Isle, Tywin's convoy paused beneath a gnarled oak to change dressings. The sea breeze stank of rotting kelp. De-wide. Cauterized wound across the lion's flank reopened in the jostle of travel, painting red on gold mail. Kevan grumbled about slow march. Maester Crelin prepared fresh willow bark poultice. Evening gulls wheeled overhead, mewing like infants. Tywin slid from litter, waved away assistance, and stood, though legs trembled. He surveyed the horizon. Long ships dotted water but bore Kraken's sigils pale, not the black of urine. Victarion Greyjoy's men, hired now by Lannister coin to escort. A bargain sealed in haste. Tywin wondered if his children would despise him for crawling beneath the banner of a rebel, but he had weighed pride against the rock's future, and found pride wanting. A horn sounded. 2 blasts. Victarion's flagship curdled seaward. Tywin's guard bristled. Then a courier rode up the cliff path, face ash, waving parchment. Tywin broke seal with blood-stained fingers. Words leapt. Casterly rock aflame. Wildfire caches beneath old mines detonated. Eastern Bastion collapsed. Half the keep gone to smoke. Your grandchildren safe. Hostages already en route to Old Town. Tywin's breath hitched. The rock aflame? He had inspected those mines only moons ago. Wildfire? He thought of Melisandre's eyes like opened furnaces, of Bolton's betrayal. A shudder rocked him. Legs buckled. He would have fallen if Kevan had not caught him. In the failing light, embers from invisible fires tinted the sky, a mournful rose. Tywin's hand tightened on parchment until it tore. Roose Bolton might be dead, but his shadow still peeled skin from kingdoms. Tywin whispered, "The wolf warned me." And for the first time since childhood, the Lion of the Rock felt despair, leave an aftertaste of ashes on his tongue. Robb arrived outside Gulltown under a low gunmetal sky 3 days later, Daenerys at his flank astride Drogon. Tyrion, dispatched ahead to secure mountaineer tribute, met them beyond the town gate, hair wind-whipped. He had news. A faceless killer slain in Maidenpool Tavern carried sketches of Sansa and Arya in a pouch with molten green coins. Another, caught in the veil, bore a mask sewn from lambskin dyed crimson. All paths pointed to a hidden patron tying horns, poison, wildfire, and faceless contracts into one braid. "Is it Cersei?" Robb asked. Tyrion shrugged. "My sister wields cunning, but coin she lacks. Father's funds are sequestered by treaty." He glanced at Daenerys. "Someone profits from chaos." Jon arrived the following dawn, giants in tow. They camped on a ridge, building fire pits of stone. The air smelled of tannin and distant lightning. Bran's raven perched on Jon's shoulder, cawing thrice. A code. "Watch the shore at ebb tide." Robb ordered patrols down cliff paths. Just before midnight, a rider returned breathless. Empty boats, scorched on inside, drifted onto rocks bearing Bolton's sigils burned through hulls. No bodies, no cargo. The boats seemed offerings, or warnings. At the ridge fire, the 3 leaders, Robb, Daenerys, Jon, sat in triangle. Drogon loomed behind like a living obelisk, chest scales rising and falling slow. "We face an enemy of masks," Robb said. "He hunts in our blind spots, turning each alliance against itself." Jon poked embers. "Cut off his refuge. Masks hide in shadows. Flood them with watchful eyes. Every port, every septite." He looked to Daenerys. "Flame lights shadows, but so can trust. We must widen the circle, invite even our foes." Daenerys considered. "Invite Euron to parley?" Jon nodded. "If he refuses, we know him enemy. If he comes, we bind him by oaths under watch." Robb exhaled. "Dangerous. Yet Bran's dream named Kraken with green fire. Euron wears that crown." They drafted ravens. One to Euron on Pike, one to Cersei in the Mother House, one to Tywin's war camp. They summoned them to King's Landing under promise of truce sealed by all gods old and new. They set the date. First day of autumn equinox, when day equals night, symbol of balance. Autumn's crisp breath combed the fields when banners converged outside the capital. Euron arrived first in a black galley rowed up the Blackwater, hull carved with leering faces. He strode ashore in a mantle of ragged feathers, smile bright as shards of broken glass. Ahead of him marched a priest of the drowned god, eyes rolled white, mouth stitched. Euron blew a kiss to the dragon circling overhead. Cersei came next, flanked by silent sisters, hair shorn, eyes sunken but burning with mischief. She wore chains of penitence, yet her steps carried the sway of someone expecting benches to bend aside. Tywin arrived by litter, wound still healing, guarded by krakens and lions both. He walked into the Red Keep's court leaning on a cane. Sansa noted the tremor in his hand. The hall without walls, expanded for this parley, now rows of sandstone pillars. The mismatched chairs replaced by a single ring of benches. Robb stood at its center. He welcomed Tywin with nod, greeted Cersei with polite neutrality, and gestured Euron to a seat farthest from Daenerys. Theon's eyes followed his uncle. Shoulders stiff. Daenerys opened. "We gather for truth. Speak openly or leave." Tywin spoke first. He offered indemnity. The West would rebuild fleets for the realm, open Lannisport as free port under Council's tariff, and provide loan of artisans to restore Casterly's shattered mines to communal use. In return, he asked only that Kraken ships quit his coast and Cersei remain under faith guardianship. His concessions startled the hall. Even Sansa's quill paused. Euron laughed. Generous lion, but why lease what can be taken? I propose different truth. The sea feeds itself. Let Kraken keep the rock's broken bones. He produced a rust-rimmed horn of Joramun, not dragon binder, and placed it on table. Blow once, the sea opens. Blow twice, the earth cracks. Melisandre told me. His grin widened. 3 blows births, God. Robb's hand drifted to dagger. We do not blow horns of doom in council. Euron shrugged. Then I will, elsewhere. He eyed Daenerys. Your green beast tasted my sting. Next time, Black. The threat slipped into air like oil on water. Drogon rumbled from courtyard. Cersei rose. Chains rattling. You men measure pride with horns and gold. I measure survival. Give me a ship west and I swear never to tread your soil again. Jaime, seated near Sansa, flinched. He whispered, Sister, no. But Cersei looked only at Robb. Grant exile or face endless feud. I am the last lioness that will not bend. Tywin's cane clacked in echo. Hear her. Exile ends our shame. Sansa met Robb's gaze. In her eyes he saw memory of his own mercy for small folk. Sparing them cruelty forged loyalty. But a queen who incited riot and murder? Could peace afford that mercy? Before he chose, a scream shattered the hall. A hooded figure lunged from a colonnade, brandishing a crystal-tipped bolt thrower small as a child's crossbow. Target, Daenerys. Brienne hurled shield. Bolt glanced off rim, ricocheted, struck the horn. Dragonbinder erupted in a flare of purple fire. Shards raining. The hood fell. A young man, face tattooed with concentric circles of flayed skin ink. He spat green blood, collapsed. On his chest burned the brand of the Faceless Guild. The hall broke into pandemonium. Euron shrieked amusement. Cersei ducked behind a bench. Tywin's guards formed wall. Drogon thundered into courtyard, head thrust through arch, eyes pools of magma. Daenerys lifted a hand. Hold. Flames choked in Dragon's throat, withheld by will. She addressed the hall. This is the shadow Bran foresaw. Mask of all knives. She pointed at Euron. Does the Kraken hire faceless wraiths? Euron murmured. I pay in screams, not coin. Then who? Robb demanded. Tywin's gaze flicked to Cersei. Her pupils dilated, but she spread hands innocent. I have no coin. The assassin's body jerked once, limbs stiffening. A voice escaped dead lips, cold and sexless. No lion, no kraken, no queen. Only the song of ending. Wolves and dragons must bleed for silence. Bones snapped, body folded in on itself, shriveling until naught remained but skin like shed snakeskin. On the floor lay 2 icons, a burned draftsman's compass and a Bolton knot. Fear rippled like frost. Samwell stepped forward, knelt, and gingerly lifted the compass. A cartographer's tool, he whispered. Used in Pento's mariner charts. Eyes met Robb's. Someone maps our demise. Robb drew breath. Enough. His voice cracked across the benches. This council stands against shadows. Euron Greyjoy, you sail south tomorrow under escort. Any horn left behind will find you Kael'thald. Cersei Lannister, exile granted on a single ship west, under oath never to return. Break oath and every lion in Westeros forfeits title. Tywin Lannister, your wards stand, your minds open, your fleets rebuild. Under these decrees we close the door to blood. Tywin bowed, relief and pain mingling. Cersei spat, but said nothing. Euron tipped an invisible hat. At dusk Robb stood beside Daenerys, atop tower roof. Capital lights twinkled like a river of fireflies. We won today, she said. Or postponed disaster, he replied. But sometimes postponement is victory enough. She leaned against him. In the east, when storms brew, farmers weave nets not to catch rain but to catch seeds carried on wind. Disaster scatters hope if we're ready. He smiled. Then we keep weaving. Ravens flew before dawn. One to Winterfell. Faceless shadow struck. Watch maps, watch Bolton's ghosts. One to the wall. White scouts stir, dead song not ended. One to every maester, gather chart makers, audit purchase of compasses. And one, sealed in wax, mixed with dragon's blood, to the nameless lords of Bravos, the council of wolves and dragons petitions neutrality of the many-faced god. The Bravosi reply arrived months later, borne by a girl with eyes the color of smoke. She bowed to Sansa, offered a tiny ripe peach, and said only, "A debt acknowledged can be a debt unwoven." Then she disappeared into festival crowds. Autumn crept toward winter again. But this winter came differently, not with blue-eyed terror or starving streets, but with the low, industrious hum of a realm preparing. Glass blades forged and quenched, barns brimmed, horns kept under lock, maps redrawn, shadows watched. Somewhere across the sea, Melisandre nursed burns and whispered to red flames of a prince who still might rise. Somewhere in the drowned city of Pike, Euron brooded over shattered horn shards, dreaming of louder songs. Somewhere beneath rubble at Casterly Rock, alchemists sifted green sand for secrets. And in a quiet tower of King's Landing, Bran Stark drew new constellations linking wolf and dragon with lines invisible to any but the dreamer. On the longest night before snow, Robb walked the battlements. Grey wind trotted at his side, muzzled to breeze. The wind tasted of salt and pine. Below, marketplaces buzzed with hawkers, selling candied ginger to ward chill. Children skated on thin ice beside reedy banks. Ravens slept in dovecotes carved with seven-sided stars. He stopped where Ned once stood, judging Joffrey's arrogance, only rubble now, and regarded the dark flowing river. Lights glimmered, reflections sliding off current like molten gold. He thought of every alley, Jon shaping new walls, Willas counting wheat, Asha patrolling coasts, Tyrion spinning treaties, Daenerys soothing wounded dragon. He felt the weight of them all like stones in a crown of river moonstone. Yet beneath, he sensed a deeper pulse, steady and ancient, beating under foundation. The North remembers, the South forgives, the East hopes, the West endures. He drew steel, Ice's daughter blade, and held it to starlight. No blood-stained edge tonight, only glimmer of constellations. He whispered to the blade, to his father, to the land. "We have suffered frost and flame. We will suffer more. But we have learned to bend, not break." He planted the sword tip between stones and left it standing, a sentinel of silent vow. Far above, a single shooting star streaked west to east, crossing wolf and dragon banners like a silver stitch. Somewhere a horn, no doom horn, but a shepherd's call, echoed. Grey wind threw back his head and howled, not in warning but in answer. The song of a realm awake and watchful, unafraid of the next verse.